Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mer Hersoner Podcast, Season 3, Episode 23. We are live on YouTube and Facebook. It's Thursday, April 20th, 2023. I'm your host, Vic and Mike, and as always, I'm joined by my amazing co-host, Mr. Mike where we discuss our great Armenian history, talking about different eras, topics, and people. Please hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and share with your friends and family. Beautiful day today in LA.
Yeah, finally the warmth is
back. The birds are out. The trees are blooming. I'm enjoying it.
I'm not going to make a comment about the birds.
Today's topic we'll be discussing. We titled it "Surviving Genocide: The Armenian Diaspora's Resilient Spirit." And our guest today is David Gevorkyan. How are you, Gevor? I'm so used to saying Gevorkyan. How are you, David?
My middle name is Gevor.
Oh, okay, so it's okay. All right.
Close enough.
Very good.
Very good. Gevorkyan.
So there's a story behind that, and I'll share it with you.
Okay. All right.
It's really an honor to be here, you guys.
Thank you for joining us.
An honor for you, for us to have you, man.
Yeah. David is currently the Los Angeles County Commissioner, property taxpayer advocate, I guess a resolution mediator, right? Yeah. Dispute. Yeah. And most importantly, he is a community advocate and an activist for the Armenian diaspora. Mm-hmm. On Monday, it'll be the 108th commemoration of the Armenian Genocide, where 1.5 million Armenians were systematically murdered by the Ottoman Empire, and pretty much entire Western Armenia, was displaced. And one of the reasons we have this diaspora today is due to that event. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to do something to talk about the diaspora and everything they've gone through over the last 108 years. And we thought you would be the perfect guest because you have been involved in so many projects and you've done so much for the community. So we thought you're the right person to be here, and we're actually thankful that you accepted our invitation. But before we get into the conversation, people who may not know about you, can you give a bio where you were born, where you were raised, how you got involved in this activism, and a little bit of kind of like projects you've done here and there?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, Vic, Mike, the work you guys are doing here on this podcast, especially in the digital world, is so profound and so important that it's really an honor and a privilege to be part of this tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe that we haven't done a good enough job collectively, both the Armenians within Armenia and the Armenians outside of Armenia, to flood the digital world and the ether of information of who we are and what we are. And that is why today we are seeing that opposing forces and opposing ideologies are more or less easily able to erase, annihilate, and eradicate our history.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be happy to get into those details in a little bit. So what you guys are doing here is just phenomenal. And this is going to stay for all of eternity, hopefully.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate it.
It will survive as long as the digital world survives. So it's I commend you guys. I praise you, and I'm grateful that we have Armenian Americans and Armenians in the world who will take time out of their busy schedules to do what you guys are doing.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And also I want to mention that David surprised us during the Mer Talk event.
Quite a big surprise.
And he honored us with these, what would you call them? Like their proclamations? Accommodations, I guess.
So one of them was a proclamation because it was actually proclaiming specific statements.
Yeah.
And that was from the Los Angeles County Assessor's Office, Jeff Prang, who's formerly my former boss.
We're going to talk about it in a bit.
And the rest of them were commendations for the fantastic work that you two do individually and collectively under Mer Hersoner.
Yeah.
And also for our good friend Gevorkyan as well.
That was a great surprise. We were really kind of
very well deserved.
Yeah, well, it threw us off, and we appreciate it. I think it still hasn't kind of sunk in. We're both kind of like, surprised, really surprised that, to see people at that stature, like congresswomen and, like you said, the assessor, the mayors of Pasadena, the mayor of Glendale, state senator. So again, we're thankful. Thank you so much. We appreciate the fact that you were able to get us recognized with those, individuals who are very important people in our state. So thank you again for that.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
So about you, where were you born and where were you raised? And
the fun questions.
And how you became an activist. That's the other thing I want to know.
Let it go.
Got it. All right. Okay. So I got to take a sip of this first.
All right. Go ahead.
Excellent choice, by the way.
Always. We're still waiting for Ararat to sponsor us. So
hi, Ararat.
Every time. We're looking at you, Ararat.
Maybe our members of the audience and us should join forces and write letters.
Could pull some strings.
Yeah, pull some strings. We could pull some pens out and start writing some letters.
I mean, the audience. Yeah, support letters.
Yeah, we need that funding. Trust me, we have so many projects coming up, and that it's going to help. So, but anyways, about you.
Yes.
Back to you.
So my name is David Gevorkyan. Why my middle name is George is because my parents really, really loved the name David. They both of them loved the name, but my grandfather's name, my paternal grandfather's name was Gevork.
Yeah.
Right? So I should have been Gevorkyan.
Gevorkyan.
Yeah, Gevorkyan. But instead, so there was a little workaround. So they named me David, what they wanted to name me, and then they put my middle name as...
Is it David or David?
Well, it depends. I mean,
no, because I'll tell you why I ask you that. So my son's name is David as well, but I wanted it to be David, and I told my wife when he was born to make sure she puts a T. And when I wasn't there while this was happening, as when they showed up to write the name, and she wrote D at the end, and till this day I am
but do you think
angry about that?
But do you think
I don't care? They need to learn how to say David.
But here's the thing, like let's say he gets into his teens and whatnot, his friends
David.
and whatnot.
Hey, Spanish is David.
I get it. But there's
forced them to learn. But anyways, sorry, we keep
no. Yeah. You raised a really good point, and I'll tell you why in a moment about the pronunciation of my name. So Gevork is my middle name. So it's George, right? And why do I have a middle name? Because I was born and raised in Los Angeles. Otherwise, my name would have been David Gevorkyan Grigori. My dad's name is Grigor, right?
Yeah.
And so I've taken great pride in learning those details because I've always had a fascination with the way all societies, all cultures across the world have a way of categorizing and classifying with nomenclatures and names and labels and stuff, how they categorize people's family names. And so I go around and I've had my last name butchered 100 ways growing up, because when I grew up, there were no Armenians in our school. I didn't have Armenian neighbors. I didn't grow up with Armenian kids. I was born and raised in East Hollywood, and we lived in the Los Feliz area. I grew up in the 90s, right? And, what's the old saying? They say that, Marshall and Hollywood High, right? So that was the epicenter of the Armenian community.
Yeah.
So Armenians didn't have their own city. They had their own neighborhood, right?
Yes.
So eventually got named Little Armenia.
Yeah.
So at the time, my parents really did not want us to go to the local public schools. This is the 1980s and 90s, right? We're growing up in the gangsta era, right? And this is Hollywood we're talking about. Things are very rough and very raw.
It wasn't fun in Hollywood.
It wasn't. Absolutely not.
No.
And so what they did was they decided that, no, you know what? Our kids need to go to a private school. And so my father and my mother, they're not entirely on their feet. They have all kinds of financial problems, just like a number of Armenian families did at the time. They were crazy enough to have bought a house back then. Like, everyone said, you guys are crazy. People didn't know how they were going to pay their next month's rent. My parents bought a house.
What year is this?
So they bought their house in 1988.
The rates were like 10, 15%.
Yeah, 13, 14% mortgages. Yeah.
Yes.
$1 million home was $1 million home.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a celebrity home. You would only find that in Beverly Hills, right?
And and hence the term. It's $1 million
It's $1 million home.
Yeah. Back then, it actually meant something.
Yeah. So what they ended up doing is they said, no, we're going to send our kids to private school. And that's the first time that I have learned stories about how difficult things were for Armenians back in the 80s and the 90s, especially in Los Angeles. So without getting into the details, which school, where, and everything, it was a Catholic private school. The best education I've ever gotten in my life. We learned how to write in cursive. We memorized the presidents, the years of inauguration, their political parties. We were not allowed to cross anything out. We had to put a ruler and strike out. We wore blue pants and a white shirt, always in uniform. My entire life, I've worn uniforms. Yep. So it was either uniform at school, or was a uniform during martial arts, or was a uniform going to work in a suit and a tie. I've always been in uniform my entire life. And so I'm comfortable in uniform. Yeah. Like this right here is my sweats. This is what, like I can hang.
Is that
out.
what you meant when you said, "Can I wear sweats"?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, I'm without a tie, right? Yeah. So it's casual Friday, right? So my mom, she's the one taking care of the kids. My dad's at work, so she goes to the private school to enroll my sister and me. And here's where the fun stuff starts. And I hope our audience is listening carefully to this. It's a Catholic private school, Christian school. If I had the financial ability today, I would entirely finance that school and I would promote it. It's an incredible best education I've ever gotten in my life. But they didn't know what Armenians were at the time in Hollywood, in Los Angeles. They didn't have this much interaction with Armenians and the Armenian community. So one of the school representatives, and I don't want to really mention who or what capacity they were in, but they were in a decision-making capacity, probably the highest decision-making capacity, asked my mom, why do you want to bring your kids to a Christian school? Armenians are Muslim.
Oh my God. Wow.
All right. So while that's it's a perfectly wonderful thing, we don't have, I personally don't have anything against any race, creed, religion. Yeah. Whatever helps you as a guide and a compass in this life to live a fulfilling life, more power to you. I will be all the more supportive. I love multiculturalism. I love religion, but just focusing on the historical accuracy of it, right?
Yeah.
So there wasn't much interaction, so much information. So she goes, well, Armenians are Muslim. I mean, why do you want to bring your kids to a Christian school? So my mom said, well, first of all, and my mom's a highly educated woman. She's a linguist and a Armenian literature subject matter expert. She was a principal, Pioner Palati, and all this fun stuff. So for her, that was kind of like she's sitting with an equal there, okay, and she's getting pushback on sending her kids to a school that she's going to have to pay for. So my mom says, no, we're Christian, yeah, and so we want to bring our kids here, and I'm going to cut this short so I don't ramble on. And then so she said, okay, fine, if you're saying they're Christian, you guys are Christian, that's fine, but what relationship do you have with Catholicism? Like, are your children baptized Catholic? And my mom said, well, we have a relationship with Catholicism. She says, well, we're Christians. And she goes, well, no, unless if you can prove to me that there is a relationship between your family and Catholicism, I can't let you.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't admit your children. So my mom, being the power player that she is, and my mom's a strong woman, okay? So my mom, her mom, my sister are kind of like my my models of the strong leadership women.
The bedrocks.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Absolutely. There's a lot of things I see against women or in current society where I'm like, well, I've never seen that in my family. I can't believe that it actually exists. Yeah. And so, so they're my role models in the female world. And so, so my mom got angry. She left. And she said, I'm gonna win this one. So she got in touch with my father's relatives on the other side of the world in Syria. And there's a reason why I'm telling you this. Got in touch with relatives on the other side of Syria, and through them, through the grapevine and through the social family network, got in touch with some relatives and some faraway cousins and stuff, and said, I need your help. Mm-hmm. And the help was to go to the Armenian Catholic Church in Damascus, mm-hmm. where my grandfather was born, and ask the church to send a copy of the membership roster that has my grandfather and the entire family, their membership roster of the Armenian Catholic Church in Damascus.
Wow.
And so they took a photo of it, a picture of it, as proof, right? And so she goes in and shows this evidence, right, that my grandfather was Catholic. Mm-hmm. He was part of the Catholic Church in Damascus. And so, the rest was history. I mean, we got admitted to the school. No other Armenians. I'm not saying that no Armenians ever went to that school. Yeah, we were there, but we didn't interact with Armenians. I mean, nowadays, regardless of what area you live in the county of Los Angeles, kids associate with other Armenian children. And so we got accepted and we got integrated into Catholicism. So I was baptized in Surp Echmiatzin. I was baptized Apostolic Christian, and I went through the Catholic Church's sacraments. I went through First Holy Reconciliation, First Holy Communion. Yeah. Like I said, best education I ever got. And then the entire school had only 325 kids.
Wow.
Yeah, that's it. So it first to 8th grade. That was it.
Super private.
I went to school with the same 35 kids. A few kids came and went. Same kids from 1st to 8th grade. We graduated together. My sister went on to Holy Family in Glendale. I went, and then we moved to Glendale, where I went to Hoover High School. Mm-hmm. Now, here's where the second struggle comes in. 1997, a short little Armenian kid walks into a public school, Hoover High School. Okay.
With thousands.
Not 325 kids, 3,250 kids. It's so big. We had 2 separate lunch hours, and the 9th grade was divided based off of your proficiency. It was divided into corps, and every corps was given a color. So children were segregated into colors.
Yeah.
I was part of the red corps.
I was part of the green.
Okay.
That's in Marshall.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, was Marshall?
Yeah, Marshall. After not 9th grade for us, 10th grade, they started doing the whole color thing.
I don't remember that. Yeah. I remember it was there was a track system.
The minute the LA County went from when junior high school disappeared and became middle school and became from 6th to 8th.
Yes.
And then 9th. So I was junior year it happened because I was already a freshman. Then junior year, that's when the color system kicked in and I was under the green.
Anyway.
Yeah, go on.
So a lot of Armenian kids, Hoover High School. Some of them know how to speak English. Some of them don't. Some of them had just newly immigrated into the United States.
Yeah.
A lot of them needed assistance with translating stuff. I was always very happy to step in and help all of our brothers and our sisters. But it was a completely different environment, and there is no dress code. Baggy pants, the filas, the Adidases, the baggy. It was a time where they had just outlawed the woven belts that had the initials on it because they were
gang affiliation.
So there was this type of culture they were trying to fight against. So it was a completely different world. And then comes April 24th. Okay, well, April 24th, Armenians are trying to be unified. They're trying to be tribal. And so everyone decides that, okay, April 24th, we're not going to go to school. April 23rd, and I remember like it was yesterday, it was a Thursday. They're like, on Thursday, we're all going to dress black. We're all going to dress black. because it's a time of mourning, time of grief. We're going to go to school. So we all do that, and everyone's dressed up in their dressy slacks, their dressy black shirts, and their dressy shoes that you would wear to go to like a banquet event. Everyone's at Hoover High School. All the Armenians are dressed in black. And then we survived snack. We went in. Now it's lunchtime. We're going out, and the news is spreading like wildfire. What happened during snack? Armenians and Latino kid and an Armenian kid, they bumped heads, and they got into a pushing match, and they exchanged profanity. And so now we have to defend one another's honor on the football field by joining forces of 100 on one side and 100 on the other side, and get into this fist fight, physical rumble over what we have absolutely no idea why, but it's spread like wildfire that for some reason there's a reason to get into a huge fight on the football field. And so all you can see is just people running up the stairs, running towards the field. So you have the two opposing groups running together on the same stairs in the same hallways to get to the same football field, then to divide on opposite sides and then collide.
It looks like it sounds like a choreographed movie.
Yes, right? Yeah. But it doesn't end there. Then you have the John Marshalls and the Hollywood high schools, and you have the schools from other areas of people from both sides, and much older people jumping fences, going on the field to fight with people that they don't know why they're fighting. We don't know why we're fighting the other side. The other side doesn't know why they're... All I know is that the teachers, the entire administration is scrambling, and they're just grabbing whoever they can and taking everyone into the dean's office, and equally not even asking what happened, just suspending everybody to try to find some way to control what's happening. Well, apparently Hoover High School wasn't the only place that happened. And so this issue was rampant through all of the other high schools where students of different ethnicities are now fighting one another, especially on such a solemn day like the Armenian Genocide, which stands for something far more greater and far more important than just the Armenian Genocide, right? Yeah. And I always like to remind everybody, whenever we talk about the Armenian Genocide, we also must absolutely include the Greek and the Assyrians as part of part of that history. Oh yeah. So it's not just an Armenian issue; it's a human issue. It's a multicultural issue, and so here we have issues like this, where we saw students get hurt. We saw students get suspended, affected people's lives, affected their educations. And so I'm looking at this and I'm looking at this is the real world. This is very raw, and it's in front of us, and it's happening every day. And as Armenians, we're facing this, and as American kids, we're facing this as well, where American kids, regardless of what their ethnicity is, where they're coming from, they're getting into fights with one another, where if they were a little older and a little more mature, they probably wouldn't do that. Yeah. But there's this kind of thing that's kind of instilled inside of children where they get infected by prejudice and racism and intolerance.
It's like an echo chamber.
Yeah, and then and some real problems result from this that can have very devastating consequences, as we've seen throughout the years growing up in the 90s in Hollywood.
Yes.
Now, how did you... Is this something that kind of made you get into activism? Was it like some kind of a wake-up call? What made you go into to basically serve the community?
So my reason for getting into activism was, ever since I was a little kid, I always felt like I needed to protect and defend people. Yeah. Whether it was my family members, my best friends, my community, my neighborhood, I don't know, the animals on my street, just society in general, just kind of like based off of good principles that everyone should live by, and try to match that model as closely as we possibly can. But I was somehow always in the guardian role, and I've always looked at it as, okay, you can be an activist and advocate for issues and stuff, right? But why are we really doing that? We're really trying to protect or defend something from being harmed. right? Yeah. So you have to ask multiple layers of why and get to the core of it. And so I've always kind of felt like in high school, there were kids that were bullied, and I would put myself right in the middle of it and step up and protect whoever that was getting bullied, and I would probably be the one that ended up getting into trouble. Which is fine.
It's
like
least. The sacrificial lamb story.
You know the old saying says, no good deed goes unpunished, right?
Absolutely.
So it's fine, and which made it that much more easier to cope with, right? So being an advocate, an activist in our community, I saw that there was a lot of injustice being done, and it's not just about the Armenian community. I've been involved in a lot of different social and political issues around the county of Los Angeles that I felt very strongly about, and I've stepped up. I've supported as much as I could, as much as I understood how to. But the reason for becoming an activist was to kind of like be a guardian, to protect people and to protect children and to protect things that are valuable to us as a society. And it was kind of like that. I used that as a compass to kind of guide me. Sure. And I learned that there's so many ways of doing that, and there's so many different ways of being an activist that I've always tried to share with other people to kind of like either join forces or get involved or become activated. Because that's what an activist needs to do. You need to activate people to act, right?
Yes.
I've always liked to look at myself as more of an advocate rather than an activist. And so the very, very first time I ever got involved in Armenian related activism or activity was when the students at CSUN, the ASA, a group of them had come together with, and I could be mistaken on the history. It was such a long time ago, and I'm sure my other activist friends who were much more involved in this than I was, and who are a little older as well, might have a different perspective on this story. But from what I remember, the ASA at CSUN, they wanted to hold a march in Hollywood. And so I was, I think about 16 at the time. And so I participated in standing guard at one of the roads and where the roadblock was, to keep traffic from going in that direction. And so that was the very first time. And then all throughout, my family has been involved in supporting our churches, and my uncle was involved in government in Armenia, who passed away a couple of years ago. He was like a mentor to me. He would always advise me on things, and we'd have these long intellectual conversations and would debate. And so it was always very inspiring. Excuse me. And so slowly things started waking up inside of me. And by the time I was 21, 22, I decided that I want to actually, with very passionately and with sharp focus, just pursue a career in government, because I always wanted to be in government. I thought that, it's I would be able to help people from the inside out, as much as from the outside in.
Yes.
And I learned that you can actually do both. It's incredible. It's a wonderful system that we have in the United States here. And so one thing led to another. One relationship led to another. One opportunity led to another. And now you have like this inventory of stories and experience that you're happy to share with everyone and to pass on to anyone that would be interested in getting more involved in community
also the
affairs. Network
that you created, obviously.
Yeah. I have discovered, and I always, I don't believe that you should ever really thank your friends. You should appreciate your friends, right? But you don't have to, if it's your real friend, you don't need to like thank your friend, thank you for being my friend, right? That's why I'm always very, very thankful to God for the people that he has introduced me to, or has led me to connect on a path where I've done some incredible things. Absolutely. That I've felt things, I've seen things, I've experienced things, I've created things that I look up and I say, I know you're there, and I'm happy to continue doing what you need me to do.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned doing some incredible things. Now, you were involved in the erection of the Pasadena and the Rolling Hills Armenian Genocide Memorial. Can you kind of talk about the process being involved in the creation, the establishment, including the planning, the design, and the basically all the stages that you went through? And I know there was a lot of people involved in this as well. We can talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. So there's another really good saying that's always left an impression on me. It says, nothing worth doing in life can be done alone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And also nothing worth accomplishing in life can be accomplished in one lifetime. And so the relationships that came about from the Pasadena Armenian Genocide Memorial Project, to me, I believe are lifelong relationships that I built with the people that sacrificed time away from their family, their kids, money, that they donated on several occasions repeatedly. People that opened doors, that introduced, brought in relationships, just all the pooling of the resources that happened to make this project happen, because it's actually a one-of-a-kind project that opened up doors to other opportunities. And so I think it's very important for me to mention something for our audience members. Everything that we are doing today, just the fact that we can get up and comfortably pick up a bullhorn and start yelling whatever it is that we want in the interest of our Armenian identities, regardless of how effective it is or not. It's because there are people that have done things before us, that have cleared the path, that have laid the foundation, that we are able to continue on that work. And I don't want to go as far back as some of the things that took place in history in the United States where people had to serve time in prison for. And there's a lot of things that I personally condemn, and things that I wish would have not taken place in history.
Yes.
And it's very difficult to judge, and it's also very difficult to not judge such actions. But I don't want to get into that part of history in our Armenian activism. But there are people that are involved in political parties, in the churches, and the benevolent organizations here in the United States that if they didn't meet with the congressional members that they did, if they didn't raise the funds that they did, if they didn't rally the community the way that they did, none of us would have been able to protest today. None of us would have been able to go to the city of Los Angeles and say, hey, you know what? We're going to be making a lot of noise on the streets, and you guys are going to have to put up with it, and you guys are going to allow us to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so these political organizations are not just political organizations that we have in the United States and around the world. These are institutions. They are a fabric and a part of our Armenian identities, because these organizations, such as the Armenian Cultural Foundation, the ANCA, the AGBU, the Western Prelacy, the churches, the Armenian Missionary Association of America, and a number of these older organizations that have been around for nearly, if not more than 100 years. They are part of the activism and the political history that we have built in the United States. And so it really took a lot. And it was a very difficult point in my life when we started building that Armenian Genocide Memorial. And I'll share with you a couple of reasons why. The way that project actually came about was like all good things, right? It's around probably a dinner table.
Yeah.
And so we were sitting around the dinner table, and just like no good story ever started over a salad, right? We're with friends and
Wait, it didn't start on a golf course?
No, absolutely not. Trust me, no. And so
what was being served?
Huh?
What was being served?
What do you think was being served?
I just want to make sure. I just want to make
Wait.
Evening hours, a collective of friends have gotten together, enjoying each other's company, chit-chatting, and everyone's kind of like lost in their thoughts, and good conversation, good chemistry always comes about with good ideas. And so this idea about having a genocide memorial came from my former boss, who is also a very, very dear friend to me. I love him, and I'm giving him a shout out. His name is Vic Gevorkyan. He's the city treasurer of the city of Pasadena. He's the only city treasurer in the state of California that does both cash asset management and investment portfolio management for the city. He's responsible for nearly $1 billion of the city's funds. And so we're having dinner with friends, and we're talking, and the idea comes up, well, why don't we have an Armenian genocide memorial in Pasadena? And we're kind of thinking about it, and that was it. The seed got planted. From there, we presented the idea to the ANCA of Pasadena, because we were on the board at the time. And so we kept thinking about it. We kept looking into the possibility of if it's feasible or not. And then so we slowly started putting a committee together, and then all hell broke loose. So that project was supposed to be a small little project, a small little memorial that we would put in Memorial Park, commemorating the Armenian genocide and crimes against humanity memorial. Yeah. Well, apparently a lot of people really liked the idea, and then a lot of other people really disliked the idea. So when you're forming an idea like that, and you want to get started on a project, there are people that are going to want to shut it down and kill it.
Yeah.
And then there's people that are going to want to take it for their own and run with it. So we experienced both. And without getting into the really, really small details of all the difficulties and the problems, one of the issues that we had, and I think would really interest our audience, is when the Turkish and Azeri government sent their consul general to go and meet with the mayor of Pasadena and the city manager of Pasadena to shut down the project. So,
I mean, that was expected, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it depends on how you look at it. Maybe like a nice little letter saying that, we are against this, we oppose this, please don't vote yes for it.
Yeah.
Because it's part of the democratic
process. They actually showed up.
They showed up. They asked for a meeting.
Okay.
And so they reached out to me and reached out to a couple of our other board members.
Can I ask you a question? Yeah. How soon after you guys submitted the idea was this challenged?
So we started a project. We started talking about it in 2012.
Yeah.
And then there was other groups that wanted to do it. And so the city said, all right, unless if the community is united, we're not going to entertain this idea. And so from there we said, okay, fine. You know what? Like it's about the memorial, right?
Yes.
And we, on the contrary, we actually want to be united. There's a lot of money that needs to be raised. Okay. This project needs to be presented, and the journey of building this project needs to be an opportunity for educating the community, both Armenians and non-Armenians. So it's not just about the destination. The journey matters as well. It's all part of the
process and
the point of the process, the objective. So the community got together, formed a committee, and just like all things that are newly formed, it's very rocky, and there's competing sides and competing interests, and a lot of conversations and stuff. And so I was selected to be the treasurer. I'm like, okay, well, the chairman, we wanted someone to be a little more someone that had a much higher position in the community, someone that had a wider network. There's a lot of fundraising involved, right? So I was selected to be the treasurer. And one of the things that I thought about, I'm like, okay, well, there could be infighting, there could be opposition, or you never know. We might raise some money and the project might not have that much interest. And we might have to table it, put it aside, and revisit it some years later, like it happened in Glendale. In Glendale, they proposed doing a genocide memorial, and it never happened. So I said, well, what happens where either the committee implodes, the project doesn't take off, or it never gets approved, or we lose interest and we go back to our regular lives? What happens to the money that we're going to be collecting? Are we going to be able to give it back to all the donors in the same amounts as they gave to us? Are we going to be able to decide, okay, where to donate the money? Fine, we raise the money. We're not building it. We can at least tell the community we raised the money, and so we're gonna give it to, let's say, an organization that's affiliated with the AGBU. Are we going to give it to an organization that's affiliated with the ANCA? Are we going to give it to an organization that's not affiliated with the Armenian community? Are we going to donate it to the library? What are we going to do with this? And because all of them are great ideas, we're always going to have a competing competition for resources, right? So what I proposed was, all right, well, first things first, let's do accountability and let's do transparency, right? We're an organization, we're a group of Armenians who want to do something good. We all know how that ends up. So I'm like, okay, fine. We're going to go to a foundation, a reputable foundation, a non-Armenian foundation, and we're going to ask them to be the fiduciary agents or the sponsors of the project. So we went to, I looked into and I identified 3 really good foundations. One of them was the Pasadena Arts Council, and they said, hey, great project, we support it, we love you guys, but it kind of doesn't like fit with what we do. Even though it is technically an art project.
Of course,
but it's not how our policy is set up. Good luck to you guys, we'll support you, write you a letter of support, whatever you need. Went to the Pasadena Community Foundation. And the Pasadena Community Foundation is like, wow, great project. It's in Pasadena. Unfortunately, it doesn't align with the way we manage our funds, but here's $5,000 as seed money. We're like, okay, wow, this is awesome. And then so we went to the Community Foundation of the Verdugos in Glendale, which is regional. Yeah. And it's a foundation that's been around since 1964, 1965.
It's very old, yeah.
And at the time, they had $12 million in their fund that they're managing. So they did the Veterans Memorial in front of City Hall in Glendale. Wow. Recently, a couple of years ago, they raised money for the DNA lab with the Glendale Police Department, and scholarship funds, and incredible staff, wonderful board members. And so they're like, wow, this is an awesome project. We're happy to partner up with you guys. And here's $10,000. And so we're like, wow, okay, so we have these pledges. We're good to go. Our organization itself has a 501c3. It's tax exempt. It's both IRS tax exempt in the state and all of that. And so we took that, and then when we presented the idea to the community and we asked people to donate money, I said, okay, well, people are not going to be interested in fundraising and that we're going to be printing out brochures to promote this, or if we do an event, we have to rent chairs, right? So a lot of people are going to come. A lot of donors are not going to want to support that. They're going to just want to focus on building and maintaining the memorial. So I drafted a contract with the foundation that said, all the funds that go into this memorial fund, it's called the Pasadena Armenian Genocide Memorial Fund, and that's what they write in the memo line. And they say, by the way, if anybody wants to support the memorial for ongoing maintenance, please get in touch with me, and it's a tax deductible contribution. I encourage all of you to support this memorial and to visit it as well.
How can people get a hold of you?
Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, Viber, email.
What's your email?
It's me at davidgevorkyan.com.
Perfect.
And my Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn handles are all the same. George Gevorkyan.
We can post under the YouTube link.
And so what happened is, so I drafted a contract that says all the money that goes into this fund can only be used for construction and then the subsequent maintenance of the memorial. That's it. You can't pay consultants with that money. None of the board members can receive reimbursements. Like if someone picks up the tab for something and says, no, I got this. And then the board's like, okay, fine, I'll write you a check. We'll reimburse a board member. None of that. We've never had employees. All of our board members have been kind of like the torchbearers of the project, and we've all dedicated our lives and our time and our money to this project. But so people knew that if they paid money into that fund, whether we existed or not, whether we were on the board or not, that money could only be used. Whoever would be the stewards after that, which probably be the foundation, who would be the stewards to finish and then maintain that project, would just pull money out of that endowment.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the money was safe. So whether we existed or not, whether our board continued or not, whether we wanted to work or not, that money remained safe. And so when then the opposition came in and said, well, we want to shut the project down, that happened about maybe a year and a half after forming the organization, because we did a contest. We did a PSA and a request for proposals. We got several proposals from around Southern California. We got one, I think, from Switzerland, I think New York, if I remember correctly. My colleagues would probably remember correctly. It was such a long time ago. And then we got 7 of them from the Pasadena Arts Center. Wow. Now, why is that important? This is, and I want everyone to listen. Yes, I want everyone to listen very carefully to this. So this, and I'm probably going to mess up his title, but spatial design and architecture professor. His name is James Mraz. This incredible person. He hears about this contest for a genocide memorial design. And the city is like, well, okay, it has to be no more than X amount of inches wide by X amount of inches tall, and you can't do this and this because it needs to conform to the memorial policy of the park. The park has a policy. I mean, you can't just get up and demand whatever you want. There's a policy,
regulations as well.
So this professor turns around, tells his students, and says, "All right, well, so our project for the year, for the semester, is going to be to design a genocide memorial."
And this is without any discussion with...
No discussion.
With you guys?
No discussion.
Okay.
So there are no Armenians in that class. All the kids are looking at the professor, and this is how they presented the story to us. So the kids looked at the professor, and they asked, well, what genocide? What are you talking about? What is this genocide? And so the professor said that, well, that's part of the lesson. You guys need to go and study the genocide. You need to learn about the genocide. You need to learn as much about it to a point where it will invoke an emotion that will spark your creativity to sit down and compose an entire environment that would appropriately represent the death of 1.5 million Armenians plus another 500,000 Greeks and Assyrians.
That is a teacher.
That's fascinating.
That is a teacher.
So if this memorial never got built and not a single penny got raised for this project, that project would have been successful in my eyes.
Well, yeah. I mean, how many kids in the class? Wow. And imagine them telling that story to their friends and now kids and so forth. That's something that's going to carry on.
Finally, eventually, we went through the whole process. It was a competition. The kids came on the weekend. They presented their ideas. We did a site visit. They created models the size of this table. It was profound. It was phenomenal. Just the symbolism that they used and the architectural details that they included, like the Armenian sign of eternity.
They had to think about it.
Yes. Yeah. They studied Armenian architecture. They studied Armenian language for the letters because a lot of them wanted to write things on there, right? And so it was profound. It was amazing. It was a learning experience for us as well.
That's cool, man.
So finally, at the end, we selected a student named Catherine Menard's design, and this project blew up. Russian papers, blogs in Armenia, Pasadena Stars, everybody wrote about it. It was incredible. And then we had to go through the formalities of, there was a commission that had to approve it and give its recommendation to the city, and then the city had to vote on it.
Yeah.
And at that time, when they saw, okay, so this project survived the formation of a committee, the project survived all the naysayers and all of the people trying to bite away and bring the organization down, writing stuff about us, criticizing us, wanting us to fail, and then all of, so we survived that. We survived the commission. The commission has given its recommendation to the city council. This is getting real. Now, how do you say no to the Pasadena Art Center's design? I mean, the Community Foundation is a partner. The Pasadena Art Center is a partner. You have all these Armenian organizations that have come together. And what is most important is I kept reminding city officials, I kept reminding our community that while this is a memorial, but around the memorial, we're placing benches. Around the memorial, we're placing 16 pomegranate trees that are representative of the 16 provinces that where the genocide happened, it's very important for me to mention that Dr. Garabet Momjan, who passed away just 2 weeks ago, he was the subject matter expert that checked everything for accuracy and worked with the designer and the architect and the pro bono architect, right? And so everything was historically accurate and very defensible through the eyes of a historian, a qualified historian. And so this is real. And so how do you say no to an entire community that has come together that's not just building a memorial, but is completely redoing that entire section, that corner section of Pasadena's historic Memorial Park? So I kept reminding people that whether you agree with the particular design, because we had art critics, everyone's an art critic.
Absolutely.
I don't like this. I don't like the way it's shaped. I don't like the material it's made out of. But at the end of the day, it was more than just a memorial. For those who did not necessarily believe in the memorial, they could at least appreciate it as a park beautification project. City Council voted unanimously in favor for it. And so we contracted with the construction company with one very pressing issue. We started in 2012. It is now the end of 2014, and the 100th anniversary is coming up in 2015. So part of the conversations and the assertions that we were making is that we need this thing to be built for the 100th anniversary as part of the commemoration across the globe, including where the Pope came to Armenia, as part of all of the protests and the marches that were happening around the world in France and Germany and Canada and all over in all parts of the United States.
And we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that.
And so it had to be done by the 100th anniversary. Problem is that, there's still details. It's construction, there's setbacks, there's financial stuff, money coming in, pledges, there's all kinds of stuff that are happening, and we're all trying to meet this deadline, and we're like, no, you know what, we're going to make it happen. And with the grace of God, with the help of the community being unified, wrapped around this one project, we stood up and we proclaimed that, nope, this is going to be ready for the 100th anniversary, and we're going to do a big unveiling ceremony for this. 2,000 people were at that unveiling ceremony.
Was it announced, or was it already being written in, let's say, any local papers?
Absolutely.
So people were well aware of what was.
I mean, we did not believe in spending money
outside of word of mouth, of course.
We didn't believe in spending money on marketers or promoters because we wanted to focus as much of the money just on building.
Sure, of course.
Because we're not interested in the publicity of it, but we were interested in making sure that people are aware and they're informed, right? So there's a delicate balance between that. But we marketed as best as we could. Facebook, Instagram, our own networks, and the word went around pretty fast.
Now, everything that you're describing obviously had to take a gargantuan collective, I guess, let's call it effort. To bring together different communities, different groups, different okumps and whatnot from different cities, different areas around the world. Because as we all know, our people are spread far and wide around the globe. What was some of the factors that contributed to that unity, and what were some of the challenges? Let's say, I think the challenges may have. I think for me personally, I would like to hear more about the challenges than what brought people together, because I'm sure there was some real differences of opinion.
Yeah. So I'm going to share a little bit of something that I've never shared to such a wide audience before. During the groundbreaking ceremony in 2014, close to about 800-900 people came to that small area where we had both churches come, and they did a prayer and an invocation and a blessing ceremony, where this sacred memorial was going to be built. And it was kind of like flat land, grass. It's a park. Mm-hmm. And so I strongly believed, and I hope if people are listening, this will be the part where I'll be able to capture your attention again. I believe that it was really, really important to create some kind of a connection between this part of the world and that part of the world. And I say that in quotes. I think it was important to make a connection, just like Armenians and the United States, Armenian Americans and Armenians around the world have always had a relationship, whether on a government level or on a social level or on a trade level. So how would we be able to make this connection other than just calling it a Armenian Genocide Memorial, which we in fact did not want to. We wanted it to serve as an Armenian Genocide Memorial because the Armenian Genocide was the first genocide of the century. But it's a memorial that stood for crimes against humanity. Mm-hmm. And our slogan was man's inhumanity to man, which also came from the designer from the Art Center. So I had soil, real soil from Shushi, where when the Armenians liberated Shushi by the gorge and they shot off the last rounds of artillery, and the forces retreated and they proclaimed that they had liberated Shushi and now it was under ethnic Armenian control, and part of Nagorno-Karabakh and so forth. The soil was taken from there symbolically and taken into Karabakh, or people took it symbolically to Armenia. Well, I had a handful of that soil. And symbolically, what I did was, in that sacred space, I asked if we could, as part of the ground blessing ceremony, include and disperse that soil in the foundation and the soil of where this memorial was going to be built. Symbolically, where Armenians were displaced from their homelands, from their homes, from Western Armenia and Artsakh and so forth. So to kind of have that symbolic relationship there, we put the dirt, we mixed it with the soil where the foundation was going to be built, and that was part of the ground blessing ceremony.
Very cool.
That's so a beautiful story.
So you sacrificed that. It's excellent.
No, it was actually put to better use than just being kept in my possession.
Yeah. But to add to that, the unity of the diaspora. I think, again, we mentioned in the beginning of the show, because of the genocide, the reason why the diaspora exists is because they were displaced. A lot of them went to Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, so forth, and then United States. So many people early, Fresno is because of the genocide. Obviously, there were some who came before, but can you talk about, from your experience and being an activist, about the unity of the diaspora and let's say the transitions and phases it's gone through? Because I see a big divide right now in the diaspora. It could be politically, it could be, even in American politics, you have a divide within the Armenian diaspora. Plus now with what's happening in Armenia, there's that divide as well.
Yeah. Very, very important point to talk about. It's extremely important. So, by the way, when you mention, escaping the Armenian genocide and stuff, my father's grandfather, my great-grandfather, and so my father's both paternal and maternal grandparents, they're from Eintop, my dad's grandmother, and then the other grandparents are from Besni. Besni is part of the Adana
region.
And where the recent earthquake happened, where it killed so many innocent people in Turkey and Syria.
Further west than Anteb.
Yeah, and so from Besni they came down to Damascus in Syria. They settled there, and then during the Nergacht, they went to Yerevan, and my grandfather was actually among the activists in the Syria region who was part of that movement of convincing Armenians to go to the historic Armenian land so that Armenia could have a state under the Soviet Union. And that's an entirely different topic, but so that activism is kind of like runs in the blood. And so I think it is extremely important to highlight the following. And I want to direct what I'm saying to my brothers and sisters who are listening. Yes, there is division in the Armenian community. We can't deny it, and we shouldn't try to sweep it under the rug. But the first thing that we must accept and acknowledge is the reality that this problem is not unique to Armenians. Okay? I assure everybody, stay calm. Armenians are not the only ones that have these types of issues within their communities. This is not an Armenian issue. This is a human issue. Okay? We have far too many hyphens within our communities as Angelinos, as people live in Glendale, as Christians, as members of just about every kind of label and category that we can
Americans,
find. All of it. I grew up with Filipino kids and Koreans. My Catholic school, most of my brothers and sisters whom I'm in contact with until today, that mostly they were Filipino with Latino last names and who were Catholic. I went to 7 years of martial arts and I got my black belt as a kid. And 4 days out of the week, I spent several hours with mostly Korean children. And we became friends over the years, and we went to each other's birthday parties, and we went to we had playtime together at each other's homes. And my name wasn't David, it was David. And then my Filipino brothers and sisters' parents would say my name in a different dialect, and so I grew up very multicultural, and then so this unity thing that you're talking about it's so funny. Where I'm not Hayastansi, I was not born and raised in Hayastan, okay, but because I speak Eastern Armenian, I'm labeled as Hayastansi. Okay. So I go to Hayastan, and all of my Hayastansi cousins, they say, "Oh my God, you speak Armenian so well." I'm like, I don't know, what language was I supposed to speak? I mean, I grew up in an Armenian household, right? Yeah. So Armenian is not my first language, but English is not my second language either.
Yeah.
English and Armenian are both my first languages.
Shared first.
Right?
Yeah.
So they're like, well, people on one side of the world call me Hayastansi. The Hayastansis call me the America Hai, right? Yeah. Okay. So I was born and raised, grew up in Hollywood. I came to Glendale. They're like, but you're from Hollywood. I was working for the city of Pasadena, and I was active in the Armenian community and political stuff in Pasadena. And they're like, but you're from Glendale. They're like, how come you speak Eastern Armenian? Or why don't you speak Western Armenian? You know, but my dad's side of the family, plenty of people speak Armatahayerin.
Yep.
You know, from the Syria side, the Lebanon and stuff. My mom's side from the... So no matter where you go, what you do, you're going to be labeled as something.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Catholics said you're apostolic. The apostolic say, but you went to a Catholic school. You will never, ever wholeheartedly find your place if you try to align yourself with all these labels. It's never going to happen.
No, it won't.
So what we need to do is, instead of trying to label each other as the Glendale-ці and the North Hollywood-ці and the Dashnak, the Hanchak, the Ramkavar, the I don't know, the Nikolakan and the other. So at the end of the day, I strongly believe that there's only one thing that's going to unite us.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that we are not being attacked today because of our identities. We are not just being attacked as our identities, but we are being attacked because of our values. And our identities as Armenians are very closely and very tightly woven to our values. Mm-hmm. Being Armenian is not just an identity, it's an entire value system.
Yes.
And I know I may be getting into some controversial waters right now, and there's a lot of people that may completely disagree with me. But I believe that if it works for us to try to preserve our identities, great. But I think we should not let go of our values or neglect protecting and defending our values as well.
Of course, that is one of the most important things.
Right. So when it comes to unity, we are not the only ones. But we might also be the ones that air it out in public the best.
Yeah. Well, listen.
Maybe we should try to kind of,
when you talked about the labels,
keep that under control a little.
You know, I grew up in Hollywood. He did. You know, when we moved to Glendale, same thing. Hollywood-ці, Glendale-ці. And you know what? I see that. I see that little bit of the divide in Armenian schools.
Come on, just before the podcast, he was labeling us as the guys who are balded with beards, right?
Yeah.
Hey, but that's a physical feature. That's just a physical.
Most Armenian men are bald by this age, so you're one of the lucky ones.
Not me.
But you know, and I see it in schools, the divide. Even though the teachers try not to, but even with kids, my kids go to Armenian school. You know, innocent kids already know. Oh, he or she is Western. Mm-hmm. I'm Eastern. That needs to stop. Armenian is Armenian. It doesn't matter. And then that's what I try to teach my kids. Even with friends that I have a lot of, you know, Armenians from Lebanon, Syria, friends who, you know, and they speak different dialect. I understand both of them. I'm lucky enough to understand and speak both of them. But anytime that topic comes off, I jump in. I'm like, stop it.
Yeah.
We're all Armenian. Doesn't matter. The reason we are here is because we are Armenian. What happened to us? If the genocide didn't happen, that's one thing I want to remind everybody. If the genocide didn't happen, all of us would be speaking Western Armenian. Mm-hmm. Keep that in mind. First of all, I want to thank everybody who's joining us live on YouTube and Facebook. Thank you very much, everyone. To our live audience, our guest is Jesus Christ! Why do I keep calling you Gevork? Stop it, David Gevorkyan. I'm telling you, having Gevork here 3 episodes plus the
3 episodes and the event.
Yeah, it's like it's imprinted.
He's living rent free in your head, man.
Yeah, seriously. Well, I talk to him on a daily basis, so it's. But this kind of leads me. The unity part leads me into the next question I wanted to ask you, and you know, especially during the 2020 war, we had so many organizations pop up, and you know, everybody's collecting money, and you know, you had the notable ones, the Armenian Fund, and so forth, and AGBUs, and so forth, you know, but. You know, there was this part of so many GoFundMe accounts that were coming up, and you had people just donating because you can't do anything. You can't physically go there.
Yeah, it's the helplessness feeling.
The helplessness. So everybody's just donating, and I was one of them. I didn't care who it was, who came, if it was an organization or if it was just a person saying, "Hey, I'm going to collect this much and give it to the soldier." I didn't care. But there's also having so many organizations. I think that was a divide itself as well, right?
Yeah.
What's your opinion about that?
So, first of all, the 2020 war was probably one of the most disturbing, for lack of a better word, just outright emotionally, mentally, and physically disturbing event.
Oh, yeah.
And I never thought, it pretty much kind of like shattered a lot of things that we all believed that could never possibly happen. What are you talking about? Drones over Armenia? Sunnik, what? Losing Azerbaijan? A blockade? What are you guys talking about? No such thing. The world won't allow it.
Yeah.
Or they wouldn't go that far, right?
Yeah.
Here we are living our worst nightmares. And so Armenians are really good at coming together when there's a common cause. Okay. I love that about our people. I think we are resilient. I think we are clever. I think we think about, when things get really difficult, we will pull together.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's part of the show is about that spirit of the diaspora.
Yeah.
And
I absolutely love that. And I myself have criticized a lot of people for the way that they protest at the Armenian genocide marches.
Yeah.
Right? I have my own sharp opinions about how people talk to or refer and make their comments about the Republic of Armenia. But to really think about it, there could have been a chance that these people could have not existed at all after a point in history where they wouldn't be able to protest at all. And so I'm not saying that every type of protesting is the best one or the better one. I can certainly criticize and stand against some of the ways that they do. I mean, we've lost children on the freeways from a reckless car accident because of reckless behavior that was happening under the name of an Armenian march where they drove from one city to another. Mm-hmm. But should we really focus and concentrate on that criticism? I mean, yes, we should expect a lot more from one another, especially our conduct and our behavior. I think we all need to be better stewards and better representatives of our community.
I agree with this 100%.
But at the same time, when you look at it, okay, should we make that a reason for us to get so disappointed and so discouraged in our own identities where we decide to not engage or participate in protesting or making demands? There's a lot of people, and I'm going to be very open and honest about this. I've been an activist since my early 20s, in government positions. I've served on commissions. I've worked on all kinds of different, both Armenian and non-Armenian related projects. And I've had friends that have told me, why do you care? Why are you involved? That country will never be a country. These people will never be anything to be proud about. They will betray one another. They will never be united. And it shattered me to hear words like this coming from people that I admired, people that I called friends, people that I associated with. I'm like, how can you possibly have that kind of a sharp opinion about something that is so representative of your own identity, like your own culture, your own people? We were just earlier talking about the Pasadena Armenian Genocide Memorial. You would stand around with a group of guys and you would listen to them boasting and bragging of how they went to Vegas and how they spent so much money and they gambled X amount of dollars and they bought this purse as a gift and they went to this restaurant and they showered this much money at a club. And then, okay, fine, good for you. That's awesome. All right. By the way, I'm building a genocide memorial. We're trying to get it done by the 100th anniversary. Yeah. How about you cut $100 check that's tax deductible and do something. Yeah, bro, you know what? Business is not too good. Ask me again next month. Maybe I'll come around to it.
Always the same answer.
Right? And that's a small handful of people where that could really discourage you. But then the vast majority of people would get offended when I wouldn't tell them about a fundraiser. They're like, what do you mean? You're working on a memorial and you didn't ask me for money? I'm buying a table. Here's $1,000. Here's $5,000. Where do I make the check out to? Community Foundation of the Verdugos. Make sure you come to the event. And they would raise money and they would invite people. People would just buy the entire table and then invite their non-Armenian friends to come and get exposed to what's going on in the Armenian community. Right? So, and then you see those kinds of stories and you're like, wow, this is incredible. You know, people have written checks from their family trust accounts. You know, they've donated money. They've believed in this cause. It was united. It united the entire community. And then so when there's a worthy cause, Armenians will unite. And I think what we need to really focus on is the bigger picture of what is it that we need to do. Look, you know what? I get it. We're all humans. We all have our own lives to live. Everybody wants to enjoy their short time on this earth. Nobody wants to be, and no one should have to be a full-time activist. Okay.
Of course.
Neglecting
you get exhausted.
Friends, family, your children, and just constantly being an activist.
And you'll get burned out.
And you will get burned out. It's happened to me. I know how that feels. And so you got to focus on a couple of things, right? What are we doing here? What do we need to do as a global community? Okay. Not as Angelinos. Okay. Not as a handful of Instagram activists. We have absolutely no relationship to the Armenians in New York. The Armenians in San Francisco have no relationship with the Armenians in Boston. Mm-hmm. And every single country I go to visit, I always try to go and meet with representatives of those communities. In Tbilisi, I was there back in 2018. I went to the Armenian church where Sayat Nova's cemetery is, and he's one of my all-time favorite Armenian icons. And I paid my respects to his at his grave. I went to Montashev's cemetery, who was an oil baron. Mm-hmm. Like the man cut deals between countries. You know, like all of our Armenians who are looking for people to look up to. I mean, 100 years ago we had oil barons. Yeah. So I went to his cemetery, and right across from it there was an Armenian school that was losing funding, and it might have probably been sold already. I'm not sure. I never had a chance to look into it again. But there was an Armenian school that needed to be saved there. It would probably cost maybe about $1 or $2 million. Mm-hmm. For us to save that school in Tbilisi, where the historic Havlabar community is in Georgia. I went to Switzerland and to a town right outside of Geneva. It's kind of like the Glendale compared to Los Angeles of Geneva. And I went to Sunday Mass there, and I had a chance to meet the pastor and mingle with the Armenian community there. They had an Armenian genocide memorial right in front of the church. Yeah. And people were very active, very sophisticated community, very nice people, very calm. You go to New York, we got Armenian churches there. I visited the Armenian churches in New York. When I was at Harvard University for the executive program, I went to Watertown, in St. James Church in Watertown, and I actually participated in a wedding. And it was phenomenal. Well, one half of the guests were speaking Russian. The other half was speaking Eastern Armenian. The other half was speaking Western Armenian. It was in Boston. Even the architecture is different. Yeah. I'm like, these Armenians are incredible.
But how is their English?
Oh my God, fantastic. Yeah. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I was ashamed of the English I speak. I mean, I have an accent compared to them. But so there is no relationship. Okay, and you can't solve a problem that's on a global platform. Doing it out of silos and behind the profiles of Instagram accounts. It just simply cannot be done.
But do you think the problem of, like I mentioned, like these so many foundations that have popped up, and not just because of the war, even before that, the GoFundMe's and whatever, the nonprofits, I feel like most of the people who do this, and they're doing it in small portions, let's say, it's also part of a selfish act for themselves. Say, look, that I'm doing something.
Like what? Like
instead
that makes them feel good about themselves. Yeah.
Whatever. Possibly. Again, there was a lot of fraud done as well, but I'm not going to, obviously. Yeah. But, I feel like, and then also somebody might not like the way, let's say, AGBU is doing their thing. Okay, I'm going to go start my own. But wait a minute. Why not approach them and talk to them? Hey, instead of attacking, and that's why I always say that we need to stop attacking each other's organizations. If you disagree with what I'm doing, come and talk to me. Present your case why you believe the way I'm doing this is wrong. And maybe I'll see it from your side. But if you're going to attack me, I'm going to get defensive, right? Yeah. And that's where I see the biggest problem also in this unity of, like you said, the disconnect between the different communities. I mean, you're talking about Switzerland or Sweden and so forth. I mean, Uruguay or Argentina.
Yeah.
I mean, huge Armenian communities. Australia. So how do we make people understand that we don't need these small pop-ups of trying, because you're fed up, because you feel that this organization is doing enough or whatever. Yeah. How do we come together? How do we bring everybody together? Because don't forget also, even the big organizations, it could be Anka, it could be AGBU, it could be any of them. They have this thing between them too. Like there's this constant butting heads. Oh, I don't like the way the Dashnaks did it. I don't like the way the Hunchaks did it. I don't like it's like, when is this going to stop?
So let's talk about our fundraising efforts that you just brought up. And I want to put some emphasis on this. And I think it's important because it's money talk, right? We're talking about some money here now. Yeah. And I want to ask our audience members, I want to ask my brothers and sisters to open up a calculator really quick. And I need some calculations done here. And whatever number you get, just include it in the comments. So I actually sat down and I did research. Defensible research that if anybody wants, I'm more than happy to share that information with them. And I wanted to see how much money was raised using these social media platforms, because back in the days when I was raising money, you would have to go and ask and beg. It would cost you your time, your youth, and your health to get 50 or 100 bucks from people for a worthy cause. Whether it was to support a politician that would have the highest probability of defending the interests of the Armenian American community, regardless if you believe in the rest of his policies or his political ideology, or if it was for a community project that we were trying to do, whatever it was, it was difficult, like cigar night fundraisers after fundraisers and banquet events, and you had to feed people and invite them and put on shows and all of this.
The overhead.
Money. Yeah. And it took a lot of time, effort, but that was it. Now, fast forward a couple of years later, now you got social media, you got all these digital platforms, and now you can accept payments through all kinds of digital platforms and stuff through the internet. You can send money on Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got the Venmos, you got the PayPals, you got all this fun stuff. So what happened is there's just way too many platforms for me to have dedicated that much time into, but I will if I have to. But I'm like, let me pick one of the popular ones. One of the popular ones, GoFundMe. And I talked about this a year and a half, 2 years ago on a TV interview with Balabek Barsamian on Horizon on the Lighthouse Photo Show. And I presented actual graphs and statistics on this. And again, I'm happy to share it with anyone that would want to request it. But when you open up a GoFundMe account, you intend to raise money, but it's not likely that you'll do it to raise 50 or $100. Some people have raised substantially a lot more money, but on average about $1,000. I mean, if you're not going to raise $1,000 on GoFundMe, there's no point in opening up an account. And I said, okay, so how do we figure out how many of these GoFundMe accounts belong to Armenians?
You went to the rabbit hole, huh?
Yeah. You know, I want problems. I don't want peace. Always.
So the best memes.
And so I'm like, all right, how do we figure this out? I'm like, okay, let's go by titles. So I looked at it and I chose keywords. Armenia, Armenian, Hayastan, Artsakh, Yerevan. It's things that are Armenia related,
the
right?
typicals. Yeah.
And I ran the query. And I got a list of all the GoFundMe accounts that had these titles. Now, there could be organizations or there could be people that like have these non-Armenian specific titles, right? So we omitted those.
Yeah.
So the number I'm about to talk about is actually a lot bigger. So I'm just doing the bare minimum.
Yeah. You're going off of the specific keywords.
Like this great organization I see doing fantastic things called Hike for Our Heroes, right?
Yeah.
We've all heard of it.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with the, I mean, even the hike means hiking. That's what it is.
Yeah.
They
I didn't do hiking and I didn't do YK either.
Yeah.
It'll come up in the search thing, in the search results.
I know it's not a popular enough word, hike, where there would be full of them, maybe one or two. So long story short, anyway, so I compiled a list of all of these GoFundMe accounts that have these names, right?
By the way, Hike for Our Heroes, great organization. I want to give a shout out to them. They do an amazing job.
Yeah.
Great people.
It's incredible.
Great people.
Incredible.
So if you want to support anyone, support them.
Yeah. So there's Veterans of Armenia, right?
Veterans
it has
of
Armenia in it.
Yeah.
So that one was included in this list.
Support Our Heroes.
Support Our Heroes, right? It's so Support Our Heroes
well.
could expand and become a national organization that supports.
Which I'm going to give a plug right now. Support Our Heroes, guys. You know, we've been saying this for months and months now. If you purchase any of our sculptures and use the promo code Artsakh, you'll get 10% off, and then we'll match that discount and donate it to Support Our Heroes. Great organization. We had Vegan on our show. Amazing man. They do amazing work. And they don't
extremely
so
passionate
quiet about it.
Yeah.
They don't flaunt. They don't like it's their donations are all word of mouth. Like just unbelievable.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry, that was a shameless plug from our end.
No.
Go ahead.
No, it's very important that we bring light and awareness to all these organizations.
Yeah. So back to the search.
The GoFundMe account. So I compiled the entire list, and there was 10,000 GoFundMe accounts. 10,000 GoFundMe accounts that had the name or the word Armenia, Armenian, Yerevan, Hayasa, something Armenian related. Okay. So if you go on average of $1,000, I just want to make sure that I'm making sense right now, and I'm not. Okay. So if on average it's $1,000, but there's a bunch of them that raised $5,000, $10,000, $50,000, right? So if on average it's $1,000 times 10,000 GoFundMe accounts, that comes out to be $10 million.
Yeah.
But let's put a label on it, because I believe it's very important to define things and define things accurately so that we can all understand very clearly in clear focus what it is that we're talking about. Sometimes we can't solve problems because we can't identify it.
Sure.
Right? So these are 10 million independent dollars. It's independent of the AGBU. It's independent of the Armenian Cultural Foundation. It's independent of Armenia Fund. It's independent of the Children of Armenia Fund, COAF, which is another incredible organization that's based outside of California, right? There's $10 million of itty-bitty little money amongst friends and family members that were raised for whatever Armenian-related purpose. Well, every dollar is like ammunition, right? And so we have problems that we are trying to resolve, and it's a battlefield of problems. You need to appropriately allocate and strategically concentrate dollars to where it's going to matter the most.
Of course.
So going out raising $10 million, and then most likely this probably happened, most of it probably happened right out of California, and most of it probably happened right out of Southern California, and most of it happened from Los Angeles County, right?
Yeah.
So we have an entire segment of our diaspora that is working independently to provide relief, but not to solve problems. Now, I don't have the answers, and I myself don't know all of the problems. And by in no way, shape, or form is this a criticism of anyone raising money to do anything great out of the goodness of their heart for their own people. And I encourage it all the way. And sometimes people just raise money and start doing things before they figure out, okay, where to join forces or how to come together. Yeah. Some of these things are pilot programs that people are trying, and they say, oh, it worked, so now let's combine forces and amplify this, right? So all of it is a possibility, but we need to think about and collectively be able to identify 2-3 main points that are truly worthy and acceptable by everyone to tackle, and start focusing and concentrating our money and our efforts to resolving those issues. And I think when it comes to unity within the community, if we promote it, that we need to unify under a common cause, if we promote it enough, if it's a great idea, it will take on a life of its own, and it will start attracting people and will start attracting money. And that is not by accident, where all of a sudden in the last, 3-4 years, maybe 5 years, the word diaspora has been circulating around our communities.
Yeah.
Look, I was born.
Nobody was using it before.
I was born and raised in Los Angeles, in the United States. In my family, every now and then, for whatever appropriate reason, the word spjork would be used, right? Spjorka, right?
Yep.
Diaspora. Now, all of a sudden, everyone is speaking on behalf of the diaspora. Everyone is an activist for the diaspora. So before people start misusing this, we need to realize that giving us a collective label that will pull us all together, an actual political term, an actual term that includes every single part and segment of our community, pulling it together
from
under
all parts
one
of
name,
the world.
all parts of the world, but pull it under our name, but pull all of us together, is a start for beginning that solid unity that we should have. So I think it's important for all of us to understand that we are not Angelinos, that we are not just Armenian Americans, that we are not just Glendelsis, and we are not just Aramatahayr and Aravelahayr speakers. Okay, we are part of a much larger community, and we have some serious work that we need to do.
Yeah. We've been on air for about 1:35. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we'll continue with the show. All right, everyone, we're back. We are speaking with David Gevorkyan. I got it right this time. Gevorkyan. That's all I want to say. We're discussing the pretty much about the diaspora and the good, the bad, everything that we've experienced, and
unifying challenges.
Yeah, pretty much everything. So, but I think you have a question.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. During the 100th anniversary in 2015, the commemoration of the Armenian genocide, what impact did it have on the efforts towards the recognition and justice of the events of 1915? Again, I keep asking about the things that brought people together and some of the challenges that you guys faced.
Yeah. So I think that's a really, really important question, because it's an event that everybody knows about and everyone tries to participate in it as much as possible. And people, if at least at some point throughout the years, they've been to a march one way or another. Right? There's very few people that have never gone to the march. So specifically, the 100th anniversary was very, very important for our, I don't want to say our diaspora, but specifically for our United States community, United States Armenian American community, and in other parts of the world, in their own countries. Something very interesting happened. Yes, we are all very critical of people who don't go to the march and who don't show up in numbers, because, it's not that we should be critical of one another, but I do believe it's good and it's healthy for us to have higher expectations from one another, right? We always keep each other.
It's like an homage.
Yes, yeah,
sort of, or like a pilgrimage.
Yes,
somewhat.
Yeah. And it's good for us to demand more from one another. It's good. It's healthy. We need to push one another. And then they say, oh, you know what? Not enough people went to the march and we could have showed up in bigger numbers. Yes, that's absolutely true. And we should definitely show up in bigger numbers. But let's talk about 2015. In 2015, I was already working for the county assessor. I was deputy to the county assessor. We had 1,400 people in our agency. So I was in the executive office. I was deputy to the LA County Assessor, Jeff Prang. He's a very good friend of mine. We've had a very good personal friendship, political friendship, employment relationship together throughout the years. And the assessor's office is one of the largest tenants in the Hall of Administration, which is kind of like the city hall of the county of Los Angeles. It's in downtown LA. So between us, we represented 10.5 million people, 2.7 million parcels of property in all 88 cities, plus the unincorporated areas of LA County. And at the time, we valued all of the taxable dollar amount of the value, the assessed values of all the properties at $1.4 trillion at the time. Now it's up at $1.7 trillion. And it gave me an opportunity working in the county of Los Angeles to see how many Armenians we have working for the county. And working in other city halls, Armenians naturally kind of get to know each other more, and they recognize each other, and people know of other Armenians working in their government departments, whether it's in a different department or their department. So I noticed that, after 2015, there was a much larger increase of Armenian employees working in Southern California government on all levels, both entry level, mid-management level, and also higher level. It's my experienced opinion that this was because of the force and the presence that the Armenian American community showed in 2015. We turned out in unprecedented numbers. There were more people that turned out for 2015 than any other time, right? Because it was the 100th anniversary. It was very symbolic and had a lot of sentimental value.
All of us were out.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happened was that, aerial footage and drone footage captured and then per square feet calculated how many people were at the march. So there's an actual science behind counting how many people.
Estimating how many people.
Estimating, it's still an estimate, right?
Sure.
So estimate how many. So it was unprecedented. And Armenians in 2015 for the 100th anniversary showed how active they can be if they really, really wanted to, but they can be, right? You rattle our nerves enough, we will be.
Yeah, we're going to get out there.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it was showcasing their daily means of transportation, but it showed that the Armenian community has the ability to participate both financially and in numbers in elections, which is very, very important.
Good point.
Yeah. So either we can bring votes or we can contribute money or both. There's a lot of us. There's a lot more of us than they thought, right?
Yeah.
And we're not afraid to walk under the sun, as the last 100 years have proven.
Nope.
Right?
Nope.
And what that did was it showed... It's not about the Armenian community versus the government structure or the powers to be. No, we're all part of this community, and the non-Armenian community, I believe, looked at this larger picture from 30,000 feet up in the air, and saw that there's this really passionate people that still has this flame inside their hearts, that there's this need and this desire to be acknowledged, to be recognized. And it's more than just a personal issue, because no one marching there in reality had ever actually been in the genocide itself. So these people are standing up for something far more greater than themselves. Yes. This is human rights. This is a social issue. This is a human issue. We are out in numbers, and we're making a demand.
Side note: during the 2020 war, I think it was there was a march. Was it in 2021 or was it in 2020? There was another massive march. It wasn't April 24th related, but
it was during a war.
It was during a war, right?
Yeah.
I was walking with 3 dudes I met through a personal friend of mine from private school.
Yeah.
British guys.
Yeah.
Straight Brits. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe had some relations with a couple Armenians here and there in their lives, whatever. These guys could have recited the entire history of the Armenian genocide. I hate to say it, better than some Armenians may or may not have. I'm not discrediting what we may or may not know about our history, but there were people all across the board. It wasn't just limited to Armenians, to your point.
Yes.
To your point. And they were like, dude, we're with you guys. Yeah. It wasn't just a trend that they were a part of. Yeah. They were legit there talking to me about the entire ordeal, about the entire thing. So it wasn't just like, hey, I'm talking to my neighboring Armenian or my Persian Armenian or Armenian Armenian or Western Armenian or whatever. These guys were legit Brits. Yeah. That just moved to the States like maybe 3 or 4 years ago from the UK.
And I say the following words by selecting my words very, very carefully and methodically, that how do you stand up for the indigenous people of the United States if you're not standing up for the greatest atrocity that happened of the of the last century?
Yeah.
How do you stand up for the rights of our LGBT brothers and sisters if you are not acknowledging that people can be hurt, harmed, and killed for their identities? How do you stand up for our Mexican brothers and sisters, or South American or our African American brothers and sisters, if you are not acknowledging that people can be massacred and get away with it? Maybe if the Armenian genocide was properly condemned and the perpetrators were punished, maybe at least one extra life might have been saved throughout history. And let me interject something here that it's probably the first time I'm ever voicing this publicly. I've never had an opportunity to.
We have that effect on people.
Yeah, absolutely. And believe me, it's not just
It's not Ararat. Don't worry about it. Until Ararat pays us, no.
Yeah.
So, you guys like baseball?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Growing up as a kid, I loved playing baseball.
Big Dodgers fan.
I'm not a spectator. I'm not a spectator. I don't like watching sports. I don't care if it's boxing, UFC, basketball, whatever. I couldn't name more than 2 or 3 stars, sports stars.
Yeah.
I've never been into living vicariously through other people or having an interest in other people doing something. So watching it doesn't really appeal to me. I like the environment of hanging out, getting together with friends, and I like the environment, but I'm not into watching sports. I'd rather be playing it. And if not, I have no interest in watching it. But I do not go to Dodger Stadium.
Why?
And Dodger Stadium, great company, awesome team. Look, I'm an Angelino. They represent my community. I love it. Great people. But as an Armenian who is a descendant of Armenian genocide survivors, as an activist who speaks up against people being thrown off of their homes, I don't go to Dodger Stadium because of the Chavez Ravine history behind it.
Really?
Yeah. So, again, my brothers and sisters who are watching, I highly encourage you to Google, or on YouTube even better, Chavez Ravine. Google that, maybe even throw in their Dodger Stadium, whatever. If you do that, it'll bring up documentaries and all kinds of footage about this very dark chapter in Los Angeles history where a developer wanted to build a stadium. Okay.
This is interesting to me.
On a hill that had a spectacular view, okay, where there were hundreds of immigrant Mexican families living there. These people were not living in $1 million homes. They were everyday, regular Angelinos, families, children. They had dogs and cats, and they had a backyard, and the kids played, and they came home and, trying to make a living and start a life. It's the United States, it's that era where people are trying to stand on their feet. And in comes the government that is taking away their homes by eminent domain.
Eminent domain, yeah.
Eminent domain, for those of us who haven't had a chance to learn what eminent domain is, it's when basically the government seizes, I don't want to say seizes, takes away your property and has every right to do so under the right conditions.
For the
public benefit, right? If it's in the interest of public, it has a right to repurpose your property. Let me phrase it better. To repurpose your property. However, not to take it away from you and leave you on the curb.
Yeah, there's compensation for it.
They compensate you for it. Not only will they give you the fair market value of your property, but they'll give you something a little more, help you move. They're not evil people out to destroy your life.
Yeah.
It's government decisions need to be made. A freeway needs to be built, or
parks,
a
freeways.
developer wants to put a stadium there.
That was. Well, I mean, what Dodger Stadium was built in '56.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was '56 or '57.
And so what happened was, a lot of these people didn't even know what was happening. It was a very fresh, very newly settled. I think newly settled. I don't remember past that, but so it was a community there. And people might not have known the language. They might not have gotten the notices. All they know is that at one day, the sheriff and the Los Angeles Police Department shows up and starts throwing people out of their homes. And there's actual black and white footage of this in the documentary. Okay. And in that footage, you will see children being taken out. You'll see women being grabbed by their wrists and their ankles and being thrown out of their homes.
Oh boy.
So, you know, I talk to my Mexican American friends about this all the time, and a lot of them don't know. Just like how Armenian Americans don't know a lot about our own Armenian history, right? Because it was such a long time ago. It's forgotten. We've moved past it. We like the hot dogs. We like the American spirit of baseball. You know, Los Angeles is home to a lot of Mexican Americans. And so a lot of Mexican Americans, naturally, they frequent to the theaters and the stadiums and the public baseball. Attractions that we have, especially baseball, right? Yeah. And we have Armenian Heritage Night at Dodger Stadium, right? We love it. It brings us all together. Now it's a positive thing. But maybe it's just me overly complicating my life like I always do. I just choose not to go to Dodger Stadium because I don't want to
support,
but just kind of be at a place that has a dark history behind it, right? And so what I would like to see is more awareness be brought about this, and for my Mexican American brothers and sisters to lead me in this effort, to guide me and kind of tell me whether it's okay if I should go there or not now. Has that community healed from this dark chapter in history? If that community has healed, and if there's anything I could do to help that community heal, I'm totally up for it. But until I myself personally, as just an Angelino, as an everyday citizen, if I am not comfortable with that, and if I don't feel like that community has been healed from that part of its history, I refuse to go to Dodger Stadium.
Interesting. But if that's the case, if you talk about the indigenous people of these lands, we shouldn't be walking on any. I mean, right?
Well.
I mean, if you talk about all the tribes that were... I get your point.
I see the value in your argument.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, you know...
I see the value in your argument.
But that could be applied. I mean, not that what you're saying is wrong. That could be applied to...
it could be applied to
70% of the world?
Yeah, but... I mean, what I'm trying to get to is like, you know, the problem we have with this is, like you said, like the Mexican American community don't even know about it, right? It's the same thing that, like you said, a lot of Armenians don't know about our history. Why is that? Because stories aren't being told about these events, right? If people were aware of it, maybe they would have healed faster and accepted what happened, and unity started forming.
And maybe they have. I'm just unaware of it. Yeah. Maybe I need to be educated on this.
Well, there's so many stories that are untold from so many different things, from so many different recent historical occurrences.
Yeah. Right. But I think in response to what you're saying, you have a very, very strong point. Absolutely. And it gives a lot of room for contemplating and thinking, you know, okay, how should we really approach this? I think probably right now, really quickly off the top of my head, the best response I could give to that is war over land and territory is much more difficult to control and is much more out of our hands. Grabbing women by the wrists and ankles and throwing them out could have a little more respectful and appropriate approach to eminent domain.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure they could have done it a little differently.
I mean, most of the tribes that were taken over was basically war. It was land grab. I mean, that's all it was, and they just walked all over them.
Well, I mean,
in this case, this was a land grab in a way, but under governmental,
under more
organized
situations,
whatever. Yeah.
But I mean, what you're referring to was still, according to mainstream history, was still a little, I wouldn't call it turmoil. It was a mass movement from one side of the world to another, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of indigenous peoples on this side of the world, of the unknown world, as they would call it, you know. But that's a different topic for a different time.
I mean, moving a civilization from one part to another is different. Building a stadium because some developer thought it was a good addition to his investment portfolio is different.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned his name, Jeffrey Pang.
Yeah.
Prang, I'm sorry.
Prang, yeah.
What was his role as the mayor of West LA?
Yeah.
And what part did he play with the with anything Armenian related. Let's call it that.
Yeah. So I started my career in local government working for the city of West Hollywood. First opportunity I got, I call her my West Hollywood mom, my guardian angel, Donna Sar, and I'm going to show her this, and she opened the doors and gave me my first opportunity to work inside City Hall, and gave me a platform where I could really work on some really cool projects, of which there's the plastic bag ban. I initiated. The plastic bags that were removed all throughout California. So I kind of set that spark in West Hollywood, and we got it unanimously passed, and all the other cities kind of followed suit. And then on the corner of San Vicente and Santa Monica is the sheriff's station.
Yes.
And so one of the projects that I initiated was, I'm like, well, there's so many people that frequent to West Hollywood restaurants, bars, and clubs, especially during the holidays. Well, what's something that we could do to help improve public safety? And so I proposed putting a DUI related crash car on the corner of Santa Monica and San Vicente.
That's a big intersection.
Yeah.
That's a big intersection.
And so anytime, like right around Christmas, New Year's, right around the holidays, until today,
as a grim
that was
reminder.
2008, 2009. Until today, the city puts a DUI related crash car there. And it's so funny. One of the, because every great idea needs to be challenged.
Wait, can I ask you really quick? Was that something that maybe you had seen during your high school days that they brought before prom? That they did that? Remember they used to do that at Marshall? Bring like a broken crash.
I went to.
Oh yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. They would bring it, and it would be an example. It would be an example to show what would happen if you were drinking or you did drugs, and they would claim it was actually from a real accident from something.
It would still plant in here. Anyway, I'm sorry.
So I went to Clark Magnet High School. I'm the first graduating class of Clark Magnet of 2001. School was still under construction when we were going there. Clark Magnet actually did an entire acting skit, a theatrical presentation of a DUI-related car accident. And the entire school watched this. So it was very impressive. And when I say impressive, I mean it left an impression on us. And but no, that was not the inspiration to that. And so
still a good idea.
But it was still incredible idea. It was very effective. Idea. So that was a theatrical show that they did that left an impression on us. This one is a display, and it stays there for weeks. Right. That's great. So one of the issues that the naysayers brought up, and they said, well, you want a DUI related crash car. How are we going to find DUI related crash car? Or how are we going to find a DUI related crash car every year? And then, you know what? It's a valid question, right? Okay, so we know that a lot of people, unfortunately, it's a very tragic thing, and I'm sure a lot of members of our audience, my brothers and sisters, have family, friends that have unfortunately faced that tragedy in their own lives and families, and God rest their souls, and Lord knows how that could devastate an entire family.
Shake a whole family.
But unfortunately, it happens way too often. But then again, I mean, as government employees that have 1,000,001 things going on all at the same time, it makes their job just as difficult to target a DUI-related crash car. Well, okay, there's body shops in West Hollywood, and who were very excited to hear about this. Our office actually put in a couple of calls and called in a couple of favors, right? Mm-hmm. And so they said, hell yeah, of course, pick one. Do you want an SUV? Do you want a sedan? What do you want? What color do you want, right? Wow. How badly crashed do you want? Do you want it to still look like a car?
Do you want us to make it worse?
Yeah, well, I don't know about that.
I'm just kidding.
But so, so it was available, and they did it when we took pictures, got a lot of press in it, and I had a lot more hair in my head in that picture. So it was an incredible project, something I'm really, really proud about. And until now, every time I pass by West Hollywood, those restaurants, La Cienega, Sunset Boulevard, I love going to Sunset Plaza. And anytime like you're you're around that area, you pass by San Vicente, Santa Monica, and you're trying to avoid the traffic, and you see all the people walking around and stuff, and then you see this DUI crash car. You're like, I wonder how many people's lives this may have impacted.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm sure over the years, the city has gotten enough input and feedback about that from the general public where they decided to keep it. And they're allocating resources. And every year it's a different car.
I mean,
they don't store the car and then put it back the next year. Every year it's a different car.
well, I mean, the image stays in your head.
Yeah.
You're burning that picture of what you saw in your head. This is the bottom line.
Yeah.
It's a positive psychological impact.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But back to Jeff Prang and giving a shout out to our county assessor. So in 2008, when I was like assistant to the council deputy, Don Assar, and our councilman was Sal Guariello, Italian man from New York. He was the second eldest elected official in the United States. He was a Purple Heart recipient who fought in World War II. He was both, because he was a lifeguard, they turned him into a medic. He goes, I know nothing about medicine. He goes, well, you're a lifeguard. You're going to be a medic in the war. Yeah, and he would always tell that story. So not only was he a medic, but he was also a sniper. He had shrapnel still in his arms because he saved someone's life on the battlefield, and they blew up a grenade or something. And so he was injured. So this man was like, he represented the business community, the senior community, the Jewish community. And so there was a lot of really fun activities that we were working on. And at the time, Jeff Prang was the mayor of West Hollywood. And one cool thing that I learned, and at the time I was like, 24 years old. I'm still learning about politics and government. It's my first big break. You know, I'm starting my career. I'm young. I'm still finishing up my bachelor's at CSUN. And West Hollywood does not have a noticeable Armenian community there, right? The Jewish community is very prominent there. The LGBT community is very prominent there. The Russian community is very prominent there, right? And it's the business community, right? All the clubs, the bars, and the restaurants. Well, West Hollywood does not have an Armenian. I'm sure there's Armenians living there.
Yeah,
maybe like
there are, but
yes, maybe four, right? But so what I'm trying to say is that the elected...
And the fourth one got there by accident.
Probably, right? Yeah. And then so the elected officials there were not really necessarily beholden to the Armenian community, especially Jeff Prang, since he's been on the city council like since the 1980s, like when the city was first incorporated, right, in 1984. He heard about this issue that the city of Glendale was having. The city of Glendale are activists, right? The activists, the ANCA and all these other Armenian groups and stuff. They're like, well, it's the Armenian genocide. We're in Glendale. We would like for the city's flags to be lowered at half-mast in commemoration of the Armenian genocide. Okay. Well, you're saying, it's like, that's a no-brainer, right? So it's Glendale, Armenians, Armenian genocide, lower the flags in honor of the victims of the genocide in commemoration of this horrific event in history. Well, the city had an issue with it. There were council members that were against it. There was community opposition to lowering the flags at half-mast.
Really?
Yes. To a point where they couldn't figure out how to avoid this and prevent this from happening, where they tried to create red tape and a bureaucratic process by forming a committee.
Jesus Christ.
To review and evaluate the appropriateness and the feasibility of the Armenian community's request for one day, to lower the flags at half-mast in commemoration of the Armenian genocide. And so this young politician, a open representative of the LGBT community, someone who's been dealing with civil rights issues his entire life. He's a council member. He's also at the time a government official working for the administration of another city. He's reading the newspapers and he sees that Armenians are having problems in their own city with lowering their own flags for their own genocide. And so he goes back to city council. He goes, colleagues, I read this in the newspaper, and I'm cutting it very short. Damn it, we're gonna lower West Hollywood's flags in commemoration of the Armenian genocide. And so 5 out of 5 city council votes. Okay. So this is the LGBT community. This is the Jewish communities, the Russian community. This is West Hollywood. There is no bridge, no gap between Glendale and West Hollywood. Nothing. It was purely
fully
principle.
Unanimous.
It was unanimous. It was based on principle. It was based on values. And it's like, you know what? West Hollywood is going to lower its flags. And so until today, West Hollywood is lowering its flags. And every year, Jeff Prang was introducing the proclamation for commemorating the Armenian genocide. And then when he left city council to take on his role as the county assessor, he passed that role down to Lindsay Horvath, who was appointed to replace the council member I worked for who passed away in office. And now Lindsay Horvath is the county supervisor who joined Supervisor Catherine Barger in introducing the Lachin corridor blockade proclamation on behalf of the county of Los Angeles.
That's amazing. Wow. It's funny. Those people who were opposing in Glendale, somebody needs to show these people what America was doing during the genocide and how much money they raised and what kind of organizations they were and the orphans they saved.
We've talked about this.
When you talk about people forgetting history, just like with the Dodger Stadium situation, that is such a powerful tool to show non-Armenians, especially like red-blooded Americans, about their own history of what they were doing back then, how they were helping the Armenians during the genocide. That kind of leads me to the next question. All these proclamations and like you said, Jeffrey Prang doing such a great thing in West LA. Anything you guys have done as an activist, anything that had to do with the genocide memorial, any type of an event and everything, what measures have the Turkish and Azeri communities taken, let's say in Los Angeles County, to counter the Armenian genocide resolution and the diaspora's fight for recognition and justice, and what impact have these efforts had on the Armenian community in the region?
So there's a couple of really important points that I think our audience needs to know. If any one of you want to become activists, be more engaged, there's a lot more that we can do than simply only going out and marching with bullhorns and making our statements and spreading information on Instagram and on social media. So let me share a little bit of insight and some background knowledge to some of the things that have happened where every year a handful of us have constantly been out there trying to put out these fires caused by opposing ideologies and opposing government forces. So one of the things that I did was I was vice president of the Southern California Armenian Democrats, and then I took over as president. And I wanted to show, I wanted our community to unite and show appreciation for all of the elected officials that did not necessarily need to, and who are not Armenian, but they did things to support the interests of the Armenian American community or Armenians abroad. And so I established the SCAD Voice Awards, right? Voice of the Armenians, and Southern California Armenian Democrats, and so forth. So one of the first awards that we gave to was Jeff Prang. And so I wanted to create that bridge that connected other parts of Los Angeles County to other parts of Los Angeles County, Glendale to West Hollywood, the Armenian American community to other elected officials. And because we were growing as a community and becoming more and more integrated in the political structure of our county. And so our political horizons needed to expand. And we had people that were so honorable in the work that they did. They absolutely deserved the attention and the respect from the Armenian community. And so I started the Voice Awards. Senator Kevin De Leon at the time was a Voice Award recipient as well, and so was Jeffrey Prang. The things that the elected officials have done, even today when we see so much money is being poured into various community projects, that's all the result of decades of activism that we have done. That is not just because where the state of California gave millions of dollars to the Armenian American Museum. That's not just by chance where Congressman Brad Sherman gave, I think, $4 million to the Armenian Center in Sherman Oaks. That's not by chance where the Supervisor Catherine Barker's office gave $6,000 to the Genocide Memorial in Pasadena. That is not by chance where, I was able to work with state senator's office to get freeway signs installed on the 210 freeway showing the direction of the Genocide Memorial, and having the state of California through Caltrans and the Transportation Department and the Finance Committee approve that and have that installed in time for an April 24 commemoration.
Oh wow! So there's quite a bit of process for even I don't want to call them little things, but things like this.
Yes, of course.
To go through.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I think the most important thing for our audience to focus on is sometimes the reason why we are ineffective in what we do is because, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, just for lack of a better word, we're barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah.
If you want to make a change in your education system, you need to advocate and you need to lobby the state's education system. If you want to make a change on a regional level, maybe city council is not the right place, but you need to go to your state assembly member. And after you go to your state assembly member, something needs to be passed in state assembly and then it needs to go to state senate. Well, maybe you need to understand the function of the difference between a senator and a state senator. Maybe you need to understand what your congressman is really intended to do and what is not in his job description.
Yeah.
So I think by learning government and the process and the function of it, I think would probably serve us much better throughout our community, because it's great, it's wonderful that we are all uniting and going out and protesting in front of the Azerbaijani consulate or the Turkish embassy or the Armenian consulate in Glendale. But aside from what our political views are, aside from what our personal opinions are about those representatives or the government's administrators or the politicians or the people that represent us, putting that aside, does that really fall under their job description and under their function to be able to do anything about it? Because you could be demanding something from them that'd be like, you know what, by law, I can't even respond to this.
Yeah.
So I'm not ignoring you. I just can't respond. Or, you know what, I'm sorry, but I don't have those buttons. So it's not the embassy that you need to go to, but maybe you need to go to the Office of Foreign Affairs, or you need to go to the State Department, or maybe Los Angeles is not where you need to be doing these things, and you need to have a bigger presence in Washington, D.C.
Basically, do your homework before you go after those people.
Yes.
Learn the laws, learn which avenues to take.
Well, even then, you still got to knock on a door that ends up, whether they shut it on you or not, leads you to another pathway.
I understand,
right?
but sometimes
at the expense of time, effort, and energy.
Absolutely. But this is a universal law towards anything.
Yes, agreed.
Absolutely.
And in no way, shape, or form am I saying that any of our efforts have been moot.
Oh no, absolutely not.
We've raised awareness. We've gotten the reporters and journalists.
My point is, by this time, I think everybody who is an activist, or at least wants to be an activist, needs to understand that if you're going to go after a certain person to demand something, do your homework, see if this person can actually
be able to
do something.
Right. Make the impact in a proper way.
Now, if that person might only be able to give you guidance, just reach out and say, hey, I'm looking for guidance of how to get to this point, instead of wasting your time going after and protesting and hassling them.
This is the right door.
Yeah.
Perfect. But I'm very glad you guys actually not only brought that up, but brought it up from that angle. You guys are right on point. However, not everyone can or should be an activist.
Of course.
Everyone should be awake and activated, right? Everybody should be an activated, ready to go person when we need to defend our homeland, our identities, our values, our communities, our children, right? So we all need to be ready. We need to be equipped, but we don't all need to be activists. I mean, I've committed and dedicated myself to that because, like I said, I want to be. I feel like I'm a guardian. I'm best in my guardian mode when I'm protecting something, right? Yeah. That's where that's what fuels.
That's where you thrive.
Yeah. And it's good that some of us are going out and protesting in this location. Some of us are going in front of other elected officials. Offices, some at City Hall, some at congressional office. I think all of those are important and should definitely be done because there's so many of us. We can cover all the bases and cover all the ground. But let me remind you guys that most of the stuff that happens during formal and official meetings in formal and official places. And by the community raising their voices and making these demands justifies the reason why those advocates and activists are having those formal meetings with those formal people in formal places. And the reason why I'm saying this is that there's a lot of criticism from the detached and isolated Armenian community that is criticizing the advocacy organizations that we have that have been working on resolving these issues for decades. Okay. On Monday, I will be in Sacramento for April 24th as part of the commemoration of the Armenian Genocide. You know who else is gonna, how we're going collectively? With the ANCA. Who else? Yeah, I was in Sacramento back in May. And we were advocating for another cause that was important to the Armenian American community and to Armenians, especially about divesting from Turkey and the blockade and so forth. And I was there with the Armenian Assembly. And so there's these advocacy organizations that have the individuals who are prepared and educated in lobbying and activism. They have the funding, the resources, and the relationships and the networks to be doing these things. And while all of us are also going to these protests and marches and making our demands, I think we also should be calling up these organizations and saying, look, I'd like to join a board or a committee. Or, do you need bodies? Let me call up my friends. Let's all take a road trip to Sacramento and go and make our case to our state assembly members and our state senators. Let's go show some force. Let's go show some numbers. Let's go show a large following and a big crowd. So you can't just go and yell and scream through bullhorns, okay, and then post it up on Instagram and then criticize the organizations that are doing the real lobbying. And really, they're actually the ones, the activists of the board members and the employees of the, for example, the ANCA, these bright individuals that I've had the honor of working with for over 10 years. I've served on two different boards of the ANCA. They stay up until 10, 11 o'clock at night writing resolutions and making amendments to legislation to push into the process of how these laws get passed, how these resolutions get adopted. When was the last time you wrote a resolution? When was the last time you wrote to your city council member? When was the last time you ever set foot on a government property?
Good point. But I think
so it's important for us to go yell, kick, and scream and make our voices heard. Because, there's another saying in government and politics, the squeaky wheel always gets the oil, right? And we could do that in a very sophisticated way because we also need to do that responsibly because now we're representing an entire ethnicity and the whole world is watching us. But we also, instead of criticizing the organizations that are struggling with financing, but are also putting in all these hours and getting paid very little, to be activists and to move our causes forward, we're criticizing them instead of supporting them. When was the last time you raised a little bit of money, just a few $100, and you sent it to the ANCA or to the Armenian Assembly? When was the last time you sent them an email saying thank you for being in Washington, D.C. last week?
Well, that can be, listen, again, this goes
really, really passionate.
No, I know.
I want to activate people. I want to engage them.
But here's the thing. There's this other side to that where, as humans, when ANCA represents us, right? They go and do all this great work. When the result that people are expecting doesn't happen, they automatically tend to start resenting that organization. And that's where the divide starts, right?
Could be, yeah.
And that's where people are like, well, I'm not going to give my money for them because they're not doing their job.
They didn't do anything.
And listen, this is also a cultural thing. Every time there's an organization that, especially if it's a nonprofit and there's money being raised, they're pocketing it. They're doing this. They're doing that. It's, and that has happened. Let's say it hasn't. It has, but not all the time. And the people who have been involved, those people have been thrown out. So you can't blame people for doubting.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
But you're right.
So I'm not being critical.
No, I'm not saying you're being critical.
I'm being critical of the indifference.
That's where I wanted to get to is, you're absolutely correct. I myself have never written or called or done anything of that sort. I've never stepped into a government, except a police station, to write a report. But
I was going to say, with or without handcuffs on.
Yeah, no, without. I've never been arrested. I'm a good citizen.
You did grow up in Hollywood.
Yeah. So I bailed people out, but again, I agree with you. It's very easy to complain. Yeah. But I also understand the frustration side of, especially during chaos, where you're looking you're trying to find people who can understand and help, or you're looking for answers. And who are we turning to? We're turning to ANCA or whoever these associations are who are supposed to represent the Armenian community. Yeah. And when there's no result, or there isn't the speedy result we're looking for, right? Right now, the biggest
immediate
problem,
gratification.
Exactly. That's the biggest sickness right now with humanity.
Yeah,
is
with
everybody,
it's not specific to Armenians.
Yeah, I blame Amazon for that. But
it goes a little beyond that. But
that's where it started. Sure. Order a book, you have it the next day. But so there again, there's that side too. But you are correct. People need to get involved. People need to support these organizations. And you know what? If you think they're not doing as good of a job, then why don't you get involved with that organization and see
stop being critical.
Yeah, see what actually happens, and help, right?
And you don't need to actually join. You can partner up.
You can partner up or whatever.
I think there's other sophisticated ways of doing things.
Yeah.
But I think, and we're talking about identifying problems accurately, so we know what solution we're trying to come up with. So, in all honesty, I think the reason why we're looking for someone to blame, including ourselves, because we blame ourselves a lot. Isn't there more I could have done, or what could I have done to have made the war less painful for people, or is there something that I should have done more? And so there is a lot of that. But I think the reason why is because we're trying to take that responsibility upon ourselves on a personal and societal level. When that's a problem, well, a lot of our problems need to be addressed on an institutional level. And let me qualify that. So, there's human beings will try to come together and solve problems. If it's a worthy cause, you'll get a lot of energy and money put into it and a lot of attention. And you'll get it done. People fall off. More people will come. It'll be ongoing, but it's messy, right? It's very messy. But if you do it on an institutional level, where now you have a structure, you have a hierarchy, and you have a way where people can transparently and clearly understand how to get involved and if they do, what their role would be within that entire framework, it makes it much easier. So the more chaos you create, the less likely it is that people are going to become engaged. And that's done intentionally.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think a lot of the problems that we need to solve needs to happen on, if not on a governmental level, but at least on an institutional level, where our community organizations need to come together and reframe the community's involvement in all of these issues. And that is said much easier than it can actually be done.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? But I think that's the only way to solve it. And so we have these great institutions like the Dashnaktutsun is not just a political party. It's an institution where, as critical as people can be of any political party across the world, any political party, we can be critical of our Armenian political parties too, because we would like to expect more, even though they're doing a fantastic job, but we want them to do more, right? But for 100 years, this collective of people under a common ideology and common patriotism, right, has been able to help the Armenian identity and the Armenian values survive many, many different melting pots all over the world for the last 100 years. And that's thanks to our political organizations and to our churches.
Yeah.
But so to be critical of them, I think it's not that we're being critical. I think we're just saying, we want to expect more from you because our people need more right now. But I think we all need to go to our local church, go to our local benevolent organizations, get involved and say, hey, how can I do this under this organization and pull more people and engage more people under this brilliant idea that I have?
True. Very true. I agree.
Instead of going out and opening up your own GoFundMe account and raising $1,000.
I agree. That is one of the biggest problems. But you mentioned the word cause. And one of our viewers, Narine Dalian, had a question which she was asking, after all these years of all these, organizations doing all this great work, what is our cause right now?
Okay. Narine, right?
Yeah.
So I'll address my answer to my sister Narine. We call it the Armenian question. We call it the Armenian cause. All this time we've been fighting for recognition of the Armenian genocide. And a lot of people have asked, okay, so what happens after the United States reaffirms, not acknowledges, because the United States has historically multiple times reaffirms its position on the Armenian genocide. What happens then? Well, now we're seeing that we want to organize April 24th Armenian genocide marches, but we want to tie in the commemoration of the victims of the Artsakh War. We want to do some kind of an event or a fundraiser for the Armenian cause, but we're tying in the victims and the veterans who fought in the war. So now we're seeing that it's either the cycle of history repeating itself, or our problems are much bigger than just our history. Because not only are they eliminating and trying to erase our history, but they're trying to eliminate and erase our future. Not only are we being eradicated and attacked for identity, but also for our values. And so I think our cause is much bigger, and I would actually like to address that a lot more freely and a lot more clearly. Our cause as Armenians around the world is to keep our identity and our value by speaking Armenian, thinking Armenian, and interacting with the world as Armenians. We cannot do that if we do not speak the language.
Yeah.
Because language is a tool that we use to interact with the world. And it's a way of thinking. There's an old saying that says, the more languages you know, the more human you are, right? Because it gives you so many more perspectives of thought and interaction with the world. But if we're saying that, no, you don't need to speak Armenian in order to be Armenian, there's a lot of people who don't speak Armenian, but the desire to not want to is where I think the problem is.
Yeah.
The problem to not want to go to Armenia is a much bigger problem. And here's where I get a little angry. There are people that say, "Oh, when I die, bury me in Armenia." I'm like, my older brother, my uncle, my grandpa, I'm sorry, but Armenia is not a cemetery. Armenia is not a place to go to die. Armenia is a place to die for. Armenia is not a place to go to get buried. Armenia is a place to go and live. They turn around and say, well, I went to Armenia and, it was all right for the first week. I had an okay time, but it's not for me. Okay, what on earth could that possibly mean? What do you mean it's not for you? I agree that it's not for you. Just because of the fact that you can conjure up that consecutive phrase of words. Yeah, Armenia is not for you. But I'm sorry, darling. Armenia is not an amusement park. Armenia is not a theme park for you to go see artificial buildings and architecture that you don't see in other parts of the world.
Something you feel, something you experience.
There's energy in that soil. Yeah. There's richness in that architecture. There's history. Yeah. And it's a very, very, very multicultural place. It always has been for thousands of years. I mean, I share this with my non-Armenian friends all the time, especially my Jewish friends. And I say, well, Yerevan has been home to a very noticeable and sizable Jewish community. Did you know that there is a Jewish cemetery in Yerevan?
That I did not know, actually.
And it is the Star of David with the Armenian sign of eternity on a lot of the headstones. I mean, Google this.
Wow.
Okay. So you have all different kinds of communities living in Armenia. Armenia represents something much grander than just Armenians. And so for you to say Armenia was not with me, why? Because it doesn't have nightlife? It doesn't have clubs? Well, I'm sorry. I mean, when was the last time you went down to West Hollywood or to Hollywood? I mean, everything's closed at 10:30 at night. People call each other and ask, where would you like to go eat at like 11 o'clock at night?
Yeah. Armenia, nightlife is crazy.
In Armenia, the nightlife is popping.
Oh, yeah.
I got friends, and those of you watching, you know what I'm talking about. The nightlife in Armenia is pop. Now, I don't know if I necessarily like the fact that it's so grand. But
life doesn't necessitate clubs.
No, people are just out, especially
going out. Cafes, going and
interacting,
out,
right?
It's not a matter of just clubs or anything like that.
Social interaction, community interaction.
I've experienced it tons of times.
People are just on the streets walking and
4 o'clock in the morning.
So let me give you guys a couple of places from where you can start. Okay,
go to Armenia.
Buy your ticket
before you go to Armenia. Look at all of the American companies that are in Armenia. I am sure a lot of people don't know this, and I just love talking about this. The American University of Armenia is WASC accredited. WASC. It's WASC accredited, which means it has United States standards, which means the AUA, the American University of Armenia, which, by the way, was established by the AGBU.
Yeah.
Okay.
That I know.
It's WASC accredited. It's on a UC level. UC Davis, UCLA, UC San Diego. It's a UC level school. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, why don't you guys go get a bachelor's degree or a master's degree from there?
Graduate high school here. Go over there.
Armenia.
Yeah. So
you might not come back.
But is it let's say I'm using the right word. Is it easy to get in, or is it more financial?
I don't know. I'm sure.
Okay.
I'm sure
you don't know the details. Okay, never mind.
So I had the opportunity of having a forum there. In 2017, my former boss, the city treasurer of Pasadena, and I co-chaired the mayor's delegation trip to Pasadena, to Armenia. So another bit of really interesting information that, all the people that criticize our decades old organizations and our older activists, right? 20 now, hold on, that was 25 years plus 5. So 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, the city of Pasadena and the city of Vanadzor entered into a sister cities relationship agreement.
Really?
Yes.
Yes, I remember that.
30 years ago.
I know what you're talking about.
And
Wow,
why?
that's interesting.
Why? Because, okay, so when President Eisenhower became president,
yes.
one of the things that he did there was this global effort to try to spread world peace, right? And United Nations and all of this. So Eisenhower proposed the people-to-people interaction method of spreading democracy across the world and spreading American culture.
Pen pals.
Essentially, yeah. So it started the Sister City program. So there's Sister Cities United, and I had the honor of co-chairing the trip in commemoration of the 25th anniversary of the Sister City relationship. And it was the mayor of Pasadena, so he was newly elected, Terry Tornick. He retired from being mayor. He wanted to actually go and see Armenia firsthand, because now he's the mayor of a city that has a very historic Armenian community in there. And before I move forward, let me tell you why that's important. In 1886, the Pashigyan brothers, two brothers, got their families from...
With a G, not an N.
Yeah, Pashigyan, yes.
Yeah, Pashigyan.
Came to Pasadena, and they settled there. And they were in the rug business. And their store is still there on Colorado Boulevard.
I wonder if Haraj...
Hands down, absolutely.
I'm sure 100%.
100%. This is like hardcore historic stuff.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why the story gets better. And folks, listen to this. So, Armenian family, right? 1886, like, these people were rough around the edges from a very interesting Anatolian, Caucasian, Middle Eastern part of the world, right? Come to Pasadena, they settle, and they start, raising their families there. Fast forward to 1915, the genocide is happening, okay? Pasadena has that historic tradition of the Rose Parade. And the Rose Parade, not too many people know that every year they select a grand marshal, like the Tamada of the Rose Parade, right? It's a very, very big honor to be honored as the grand marshal for the Rose Parade. That's a no joke token of appreciation. I mean, you really need to be admired and respected around the community to be selected to be grand marshal for the Rose Parade. So in 1915, when on this side of the world they're exterminating Armenians for their identity, for being Armenian, on this side of the world, one of the Pashigyan brothers is being honored for being a respected member of the Pasadena community, and they appoint him to be the Grand Marshal of the Rose Parade.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Did Gevork or Harach mention this? Something about the Rose Parade?
One of them had
I think it was Gevork.
One of them had
Yeah, about the Rose Parade, right? Like, I don't know if this is the same reference.
It is.
when we were talking
There's
about
only one story.
Myeongkam Chain, they mentioned something about this.
it was during the
I just
episode.
don't remember the last name or the business or the family that was involved.
The episode we did about American. That's where he mentioned. Yeah.
So Well, since there's such rich history with the Armenian community in Pasadena and so forth, the mayor wanted to experience Armenia, the homeland of his community, right?
Yeah.
He wanted to experience it firsthand. So, we spent about 8 months planning this trip. It was the Pasadena Sister Cities Committee. It was the mayor. It was, at the time, council member from Sierra Madre, John Haidapedian. It was Zara Sinanyan also joined us on a couple of the meetings. And then it was about maybe 30 people. It was a big delegation.
There's a lot of people, involved in this. Armenians from different parts of, let's say, LA County, a little beyond.
Yeah. And then so the mayor met with the Katholikos. We met with the Artur Nalbanyan, who was the governor of Lori province at the time. We met with the mayor and the city council and all the officials of the city of Vanadzor. We had a conference we met with at the time.
This is in 2008?
17.
Yeah,
so it's right before the revolution. We met with Taron Markaryan. He was courteous enough to accommodate us on a Saturday, came to City Hall. We had an official government meeting. So we met with a lot of high-profile elected officials there about ways to create, at least to open conversations, to begin conversations about that people-to-people interaction, to share culture, to exchange information, so forth. So we also went to the AUA. We got a tour of the AUA, and we had a special forum where we talked about the academic institutions in Pasadena, such as the Art Center and even the Theological Seminary in Pasadena, all the museums and stuff there, and how to bridge and create that kind of a relationship. And we learned that there are Americans, not Armenian Americans, who had gone to the AUA to teach just for the summer, just for a couple of months, and ended up staying there for decades. They live in Armenia now.
Yeah. I mean, how many stories have
there's a lot of Americans in
tons.
Yeah. I mean, we have companies like Ernst & Young in Yerevan. There's a lot of American companies in Armenia.
Yeah.
And so it's my belief. I kind of base it on my own, I don't want to say my own hopes and dreams of how I would like things to be, because there is that, of course, but a little more strategically and methodically thinking about this. I think if there are ways and opportunities where we can increase the presence of American companies and corporations in Armenia, and if we can increase the flow of interaction between Americans and Armenian Americans from the United States to Armenia and back and forth, I think that could definitely also serve as some security for the country as well.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of opportunities to engage Armenia. There's a lot of American companies you can work for there. The IT sector is booming. Manufacturing is booming. Agriculture is booming. And there's a lot of difficulty and there's a lot of challenges there. But I always remind everybody and I say, look, you know what? Here in the United States, we have 100 problems. Armenia has 100 problems. France has 100 problems. You just need to pick and choose which 100 problems you want to deal with.
If you want to tackle.
Yeah.
But what I hear from a lot of people now, as far as going to Armenia, making that semi move, buying property over there, everybody's fear is that what if war breaks out, full scale. Yeah. So I think for right now, that's a big roadblock for a lot of diasporans who would want to invest their time, money. It could be as simple as buying a property to be there half of the year or 3 months out of the year, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's what we are seeing right now. And until that situation is, let's call it settled, I think once that happens, it could be after another war breaks out, or if there's a peace agreement, which again, peace agreements don't mean anything. They could still
they really
war.
don't. They always.
It could also
as we
be
know
war.
with history.
So I think it's that fear of, okay, what if I'm there with my kids and war breaks out? What if I invest all this money into a company and they blow it up? So it's a little bit of selfish act, I guess, but you can't blame people for thinking that.
So that what you're saying right now, your point right now, not necessarily in a question, leads me to, I guess, let's say a point and a question, which would be, what would be the role of the Armenian diaspora in the present day in influencing governments, their local governments, doesn't matter what country this is. In the United States, we know, the political system here, and we know that you're involved with how things move, the ebbs and flows. What would be the role of the Armenian diasporan here?
Right. So I believe that the Constitution of the United States is the most closest doctrine and document that has ever been crafted in the history of mankind. It took the best of everything that has ever worked for society throughout millennia, and they put it together and they shaped it into what it is. I believe we need to protect and defend the Constitution, because the Constitution of the United States represents humanity at its finest across the globe, especially at the point of time in which it was written and the point that we live in. And so if I truly believe in the Constitution of the United States, and I believe in our democracy, and I believe in our government structure and how we engage government and how our representatives represent us and how we elect our representatives and how our entire democratic society functions, I naturally have to oppose the diaspora's ability to influence government decisions in Armenia. So if you can't vote there, how would you be able to have a say? And why would you want to have a say if you're not going to vote there? So it's like, why would you want
interesting point
the members of parliament who represent you or to convey your voice if you are not a resident there,
contributing to the system there? Yeah.
So fine, okay, no problem. The diaspora, okay, we're 10 million strong, so they say. I don't believe it. I don't think that there's more than maybe 5 or 6 million Armenians across the world. Especially when they say, the Southern California or LA County or whatever is the largest concentration of Armenians outside of Armenia. That is categorically inaccurate. There's a joke. Because there's no way of verifying this. So I call it a joke, an anecdote, where they say that, Russia's leader told Armenia's leader that I am the president of the Armenians, not you, because I represent more Armenians, right? It's comical because there's more Armenians living in Russia than there is in Armenia. So how could there be more Armenians in LA County?
It's interesting. I never actually thought about that. Could be a good comparable, but anyway.
Well, no, I mean, we're very concentrated, hands down. Russia is larger; it's more spread out. We're more focused, concentrated.
Just Sochi alone,
right? So the concentration is important, right? Because it's more potent, it's more powerful, right? But to say that the population count, just population-wise, it's not. There's more Armenians in Russia. But putting that aside, so let's say if they say that there's 10 million Armenians all around the world. So 10 million Armenians don't live in Armenia, but they get to vote who's going to be their elected representative in parliament or is going to be their representative as prime minister or president. That's a big conflict
of interest,
right?
In so many ways.
But it's kind of like, let's look at the other side to that. And I'm not advocating for or against either one. I myself am trying to understand.
It's a valid question.
Everything for Armenians is overly complicated, right? Nothing comes simple. It's like, it's like no taxation without representation. But it's like, I live 7,200 miles away from Yerevan. Do I get to say who's going to be on the city council?
Yeah.
Who's going to be a member of the Avakani?
No.
Right. So then, all right. So should we then be able to influence government? Well, then there's the other question. Well, is really voting in or voting out people the only way we can influence government? But then so we have to keep asking these why questions if we want to lead anything into a solution. And so a really good leadership technique that I always like to deploy is ask the 5 layers of why. You ask why, you figure it out, you ask again, you go deeper and deeper into the core. Why do you want to influence the government in Armenia? Because you're Armenian? But are you? There's so many hyphenations of us. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's say we put the hyphenations aside and we're all united, we're all Armenian, we want to influence, okay, but it seems like you want to influence Armenia's government more than you want to influence your United States government. And this is the country, or Russia is the country, or France is the country that you have given your constitutional consent to govern you. So,
True.
So then how do we, now you understand that as a person, no, not as a person, as a citizen that has powers of a citizen, voting power, engaging in government and politics, and influencing and making a difference. Now, even there, you're torn apart. You got 2 churches, you got multiple political parties, you got different countries, you got 2 different versions of Armenian, and now you have 2 different countries that you're trying to influence. So you have to make up your mind. Either try to influence the culture inside Armenia, or accept the fact that you don't have representation there because you're just not a resident or a citizen there. The people who work for the UAE, the AUA, and other American companies who are permanent residents in Armenia who are not of Armenian descent, the Ukrainians and the Russians that are now counted to be more than 500,000 currently in Armenia.
Armenia.
Yeah, it's exploded.
Who have applied for permanent residency have more authority and jurisdiction and more a place to be involved in the government of Armenia than we are.
Than we do.
So do I get a chance to elect my city council member in Glendale, but also of Lenakan?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say then, okay, if I have a right to be represented in the parliament of Armenia, but from which region?
Yeah, how does one delegate?
Like if you live in the city of Los Angeles is the size of Yerevan, 1.5 million reported numbers, 1.5 million, right? There's a lot more people in Los Angeles and a lot more people in Yerevan, but also at the same time, there's so many people outside of Los Angeles who are just on vacation. And then every so couple of months, the number turns around. Same thing in Armenia. They go, they come, they're always traveling. And Armenians always have an issue with plane tickets and luggage, and they're always at embassies, right? They're always in movement.
Yeah.
It's like everyone's always waiting for a plane ticket. Everyone's always waiting for a stamp. Everyone's always waiting for an apostille document.
It's funny.
It's like, story of my life kind of thing, right? It's an Armenian issue. So if you live in Los Angeles is divided into districts. There's only 3 cities, if I'm not mistaken. It could be 4, but I know for sure 3 cities in LA County. Out of the 88 cities in LA County, 3 of them are divided into districts. That's Los Angeles, and there's the second largest one, which is Long Beach, and then it's smaller than Glendale, Pasadena. Pasadena has 7 council districts plus a citywide elected mayor. Same thing with Los Angeles. Los Angeles, oh my God, Los Angeles has 13 or 15 council districts. Can one of the audience members quickly just right. Google it really quickly. I'm blanking out. How many council districts does Los Angeles
I think it's
have?
13.
Something like that, right? And so is Long Beach. Long Beach, I think, is 9 or 12, something like. Anyway, that's not important. What's important is every person from that region gets to elect its representative. And then you get to elect your mayor at large. Same thing happens with when you're electing your congressman or your state assembly member or your state senator, right? Or your federal senators. Yeah. Like, you get to choose who your 2 senators are going to be from California. You don't get to vote for who the senator is going to be in Texas.
In Texas, yeah.
So how do I get
within state, within district, within county,
right,
within municipality?
Exactly. Yeah. So I have no legal right or jurisdiction to vote or influence government in Armenia any more than I do in France, in Thailand, in Madagascar, or anywhere else in the world.
But
assuming all those places.
But as the saying goes, opinions are like.
Yeah, everybody's got one.
Yeah, everybody's got
one. It's not an opinion, right? There's a legal. No. I'm talking about process and procedure. Process and procedure. There is no way of check marking. There's no way of you participating.
But when one says something about like smart
those are
sort of a big.
Yes, and because so here's the other side to that. Because Armenians want to influence. Here's the third layer of why.
Yeah.
Why do you want to vote? Because you want to influence. Why do you want to influence? It's because you care.
Of course.
It's because your heart aches. Because you expect so much more from it than what you expect out of it. Out of that country, out of the people, out of us. Sometimes we're being overly hard on ourselves, and sometimes we're not being hard enough. We need to push ourselves a little harder sometimes. 100%. But it's because we care. From the deepest, darkest place in our heart, like, we are all concerned, and we might not realize it, but the anxiety and the stress that we all went through from the war.
Oh, God.
In addition,
I'm still suffering.
In addition to the trauma that's already passed down to us genetically from the Armenian genocide.
Yeah.
That it's tough being Armenian.
Yeah, personally, I have like political PTSD. I've discussed it with him.
Yeah.
Like, I can't deal with any of the Armenian.
It's too
politics. much. I'm done.
It's too much.
I hate to say it, guys, but it's true. Like, I can't follow any of the politics.
I think the diaspora and Armenia should create some kind of a program, a bridge, where Armenians can become citizens very easily of Armenia, have dual citizenship. Doesn't matter where you are in the world.
The Turks did it.
And then there should be some kind of a small taxation system where, as a diasporan, you pay tax to Armenia.
For what representation, though?
Hold on.
Like Boston Tea Party situation going on.
As in for some kind of income coming into the country, so the country becomes wealthy. At the same time, if you don't want to live there, because I think you're supposed to live there a certain amount of time before you can vote, right? Once you become a citizen, I believe the rule is like 2 or 3 years, something like that.
Yeah, different rule.
Yeah, if you go there, you get your citizenship. You have to live there for a certain amount of time before you can vote. But if you don't choose to live there, again, these are just ideas.
An example.
After there's a limit of taxation you pay, once you reach that, let's say, goal, then you get to vote on federal, let's say, this not local decisions, but like let's say if it's a vote for a new prime minister or whatever, things like that, but not on the local level because you're not living there. So you can't vote who the mayor of, Vanadzor is going to be or whatever of that, something like that. So to connect something, because it goes back to caring, right? Wanting to do something.
Yes. So here's the government consultant side stepping in.
Right.
So in the eyes of democracy, and this works for us great 99% of the time, But when we get into these little details, the nuances, as everyone's using this new word, nuances.
Yeah.
When we get into the nuances, it gets overly complicated because in the eyes of democracy, everybody is equal. So Jack, the Armenian American from Texas, cares about Armenia, wants to move to Armenia to influence government. And he wants to be represented, and he wants to go there, and he wants to become a citizen. And we come up with a really quick, simple, fast way of integrating him into the Republic of Armenia's society. And I'm choosing these words very carefully. I want to take the ethnic identity out of it and look at it purely as a government structure and from the Constitution. By the way, Armenia does not have a lack of laws.
No, of course
Armenia has plenty of laws, they do. Right?
Except everybody likes to run traffic lights, but...
No, everybody likes to ignore the laws.
Well, no, they run traffic lights, but beyond that, yes, they do have laws.
Yeah. So when laws don't work, it's not because there's a lack of laws. It's more of there's a lack of enforcement of laws, right? But so let's say we have all of the best laws in place. And so we're not talking about Armenia. We're talking about some other country, right? We're looking at it purely from a democracy, government structure, a constitution, a country that has a voting system, structure. Right? So 500,000 you Russians and Ukrainians end up in Armenia in just a matter of a few months. And now they want to be represented. And now they want to influence government. And they believe that they need to have a Russian-Ukrainian representative who speaks Ukrainian from the mom's side, Russian from the dad's side, but whose father was also born and raised in Azerbaijan and who has ancestry from Turkey.
Oh boy.
And they vote him in.
Oh boy. Now we're getting into real...
So when I was in Harvard, and when I say I was in Harvard, I didn't get a degree from Harvard. I went to this program called, it was with the Kennedy School of Government. It was for senior executives in state and local government. One of the most profound programs I've ever been in my life. It changed me, it shaped me. It was like 1 year crunched into a month. It was like boot camp. Lecture started at 5 o'clock in the morning and it ended up at 11 o'clock at night over beer.
Jeez.
Okay. I don't drink beer, but like that entire month, I drank more beer than I had ever in my entire life.
I'm sure you'd have to decompress after that much.
No, because you had 50, 60 pages of reading to do to get ready for the next morning's lecture. So it was harsh. It was vicious, but it was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had in my life. It was all government officials from all around the country, county administrators, senators, anyways, incredible program. And so one of the first lectures that we got from our program director, and David King, and I want to give a shout out to him. One of the most brilliant people I've ever come across, and who had a very big impact on me. He said, well, the United States government was specifically designed to be slow. It was specifically designed to be very slow and clunky when it moves. While that might piss us off when we're trying to get things done because we want things now. But at the same time, it creates so much stability where we know that when we wake up tomorrow, we're not going to have a coup d'etat and have a government overthrown and then go to sleep, wake up the next day and have another political party in power. And then 2 months later have someone else in power.
Hence the checks and balances.
And the checks and balances, and it's slow and clunky. Yes. So I think we need to appreciate the fact that government is slow in the eyes of what is far more important, because an application not being reviewed and stamped in time is inefficient bureaucracy, which I actively work against, trying to improve that. in our local government system in all the work that I do. But at the same time, I mean, we kind of need to like step back and be grateful that as Americans, we don't need to worry about how many revolutions that our country might go through in just a few quick months. Right? I mean, look at Armenia. Since 2018, they've been trying to do a revolution every weekend.
Yeah. Well, among other places. But I mean, not to dive into another topic, but it's the movie mentality, right? People want immediate, and we were mentioning it earlier, immediate gratification.
Yes. And
why is it taking so long?
Yeah,
why is it so hard to do this?
Right. So
like,
then,
why can't I close my eyes and wake up tomorrow morning and this is fixed?
Right. Yeah. And so, so what do you do when neighboring countries all of a sudden start promoting your country as an awesome tourist attraction and start having people move into your country from all different parts of the world? And then people love it so much, as a lot of them do, and they just decide to stay. And now your demographics have completely changed, which is a very, very beautiful, wonderful thing, because Armenians are very multicultural. Because if they weren't, first of all, Yerevan would not have the history that it does, being so rich. And number two, Armenians themselves wouldn't be able to live in other countries as they have done for thousands of years, right?
Not just that. If you look at Western Armenia, as much as, you know, that's historically Armenia, but there was multiple cultures who we shared our lands with.
And
that's throughout going back all since birth of civilization.
Well, birth of civilization, I myself, with my own eyes, I have gone and visited Armavish, where the oldest metal melting and refining company, factory has been ever known to mankind. And so what they found, the artifact. The artifacts that they found during the excavations, they found jewelry for queens from China. They found Byzantine stuff, Babylonian stuff. They found artifacts from all parts of the world, from Egypt, where it was brought in to be refined and separated, right? So there has been a center of trade and cultural interaction in Armenia. So we're not against, I'm not against multiculturalism, but if it's multiculturalism because people really enjoy the environment in Armenia and not to overthrow the country.
That portion of it, I agree 100%. I mean, if people really do want to settle in the country, not because, well, initial thought would be because they're trying to escape a messed up situation in their native lands, but they found another country that might be suitable for living and family raising and other awesome things. Let's just leave it at that.
So back to that. I mean, should we be able to go to our local church every so couple of years and cast a ballot to vote in who we think should be one of the governors of the province of Kotaik?
No, absolutely
no.
So then, if you need to decide which constitution you want to defend. And under the name of democracy across the world, you should want to defend all democratic constitutions. But you need to make a choice. Okay, make a choice. Are you going to be raising kids here, or are you going to be raising kids in Taiwan? Are you going to be doing business in Dubai, or are you going to be spending your summers in Italy? What are you going to do? Here's my advice. When I was a lot younger, everything was very absolute for me. Either black or white, left or right, either this or that. Now I realize the world doesn't work that way. And the world is actually very messy. And when people say, is something like this or is it like that? I say, yes, it's both. So our generation has the greatest opportunity to make such an incredible shift in the way that we live as Armenians. And here's my proposal. We have technology at our fingertips. You know, not everything that happened during COVID, except for COVID, but I'm talking about the changes and the shifts that happened. Not everything was entirely bad. I think it opened up our eyes to the ability that we don't necessarily have to be at an office 8-10 hours a day to be able to
depending on what you do.
Depending on what you do, absolutely. If you're not location specific, right? I mean, if you're just people are moving around. The world has become an extremely small place, And thank God, we should all be grateful for, the ones that have had the opportunity to be able to make a small investment here or to take a vacation there, to be able to buy a piece of small property or something, to consider owning homes in different parts of the world, of which one of them should be the center of the world, which is Armenia. Now, what will that give you? That will give you the ability for your children to not just learn the language, but to also think in that language. Because we notice the next gen, well, not just the next gen, but people in my generation.
You don't have to
well.
tell me.
Yeah. I mean, look, I got nephews too. There's a lot of things. There's topics, subjects that when I think, I have to think in English.
Yeah.
There's subjects and topics that I have to think in Armenian. So again, it's a mix of everything, right? So buy a condo or a small house. It doesn't have to be in the center of Yerevan. It could be in the beautiful countryside.
It could be Gyumri. I mean.
Yeah. And buy it and leave it. The next year, you will have a reason to go and fix the plumbing. Yeah. The following year, you'll have a reason to go and put up a fence. Yeah. Your kids will be exposed to relatively comparably better food. And they'll be outdoors more often. And then you'll see how close Italy is. And you'll see that, wow, I mean, just taking a quick trip, going for a day or two to France and coming back is not really all that difficult. You don't have to plan a year to take
3 hours.
And dirt right? cheap,
yes.
ladies and gentlemen.
You can take a road trip to Georgia, okay? If nothing at all, you can go and spend years trying to see every church and cathedral in Armenia for the rest of your life, and you will never be able to complete it.
Yeah.
Right? Go enjoy the waterfalls there. It will give you a reason for you to travel the world and to be able to do cross-national business. Because I believe our generation, because of technology and because of the changes that we experienced in our social structure of how we live our lives, both in the United States and abroad, has changed. The old model of living is beginning to apply less and less. So I think we all can have two homes. We can live in Los Angeles and Armenia. Okay, and we can go on vacation to Greece and come back. And we can send our kids to school in the United States so they can get a solid education, and also in Armenia, but then also send them away for a summer program in Europe. Why is it that there's so many kids that go to school in London, Oxford, Stanford, Yale, Harvard, Sorbonne? They go to all these other universities across the world. The world has changed, and we need to realize that we need to start taking advantage of it. And only then I think we will be able to have a much stronger relationship with Armenian. We'll be able to see what is the bigger picture of what the Armenian cause is, about what our sister was asking about.
Yep.
But my final conclusion as a government professional to the whole question about Armenia or United States and constitutional structure, government structure, is the following. I don't know how accurate these numbers are, but they say that Armenia's population is what, 3 million?
3 million, a little over 3.
Yeah. So official numbers, 3 million. Yeah. And then so people say, but no, it's only 2 million, of which 1 million's in Yerevan. Fine. Yeah, that's whatever. Okay. So it's less than 3 million. Armenia has the problems of a country that has a population of 3 million people. Los Angeles has the problems of a city that has 1.5 million people and 10 million visitors. Mm-hmm. Okay. The county of Los Angeles has more people than 42 states.
Yeah.
So it has the problems of a population of 10.5 million people. So people say, well, Armenia needs to improve, then I'll think about going to Armenia. Well, I like to remind everybody that in order for Armenia to improve, Armenia needs to graduate and have the problems of a country that has the population of 10 million people. Or I jumped too far, of a country that has a population of 4 million. Then Armenia needs to begin to have the problems, and it'll shed off the problems that it had of only a population smaller, of 2 or 3 million, right? Yeah. And then it will have much bigger problems of a country that has 10 million, right? Now you have a problem with space, but now you have more resources to be able to kind of reorient and realign yourself in your geopolitical position.
Yeah.
Right now, you have less people and less people on a daily basis.
Well, they didn't. I think it was some kind of an estimate, and I could be wrong on the numbers, but I believe they're saying that Armenia can comfortably not just Yerevan, Armenia itself, if they were to develop actual cities in all these other regions, can easily comfortably hold 10 million people.
Right. So
and they're saying that it can go up to even 20.
Sure. Let's not even go that far. Let's go to 8 million.
Yeah.
Now let's look at it as economic development. Okay. I used to be district manager for the LA County Economic Development Corporation. I love economic development. There's so much that goes into it, and it's all very money based.
Yeah.
So let's look at it from an economic development standpoint. You build housing like we're trying to do here in California, right?
Yeah.
To house 8 million people. At what pace do you do that? How much money is that required? And are you going to be able to fill up those homes fast enough where you're going to be able to create the jobs for them at the same time?
Yeah.
Or are they going to become people that are going to be now leaning on the government for financial assistance?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you built the housing. All right, well, so I studied real estate development and legislative advocacy at USC. That's what my executive master's was in. Now let's look at it from a development standpoint. You build a building, but what do you attach it to? You got to attach it to some pipes and some electrical wires. You got to put some asphalt to that thing, right? Do you have the infrastructure that's going to be able to supply 8 million people?
Yeah.
Right? So 8 million people needs a military that's going to be able to defend 8 million people. You need a police force. So 8 million people now, do 6 million of them become police officers, right?
Yeah.
So it's a delicate balance. It's very delicate. If one thing is lacking, the system it shakes
and constantly shifting
and complicated.
Oh, I mean, well, that's the constant shift. That's the constant shift.
So the United States did not become the United States because of it just money fell from the sky. No. But, so Armenia has its own challenges. And to our sister Naughtiness point, I mean, the cause. Okay, well, yeah, you know what? There's a lot of things Armenia could change. Education system needs to be improved. Oh my God, Lord knows the healthcare system, the hospitals need to be changed in Armenia.
Yeah.
I had a very devastating experience in Armenia regarding the hospitals with my mom. When we went on that delegation trip, I took my mom with me. My grandmother had just passed away. My uncle had just passed away. She was grieving and she just had surgery. And so I'm like, Mom, you know what? Let's go to Armenia, spend some time with your sister. It'll be a good vacation for you. I'll take care of the delegation thing. It'll be a good change of scenery. You'll feel better. We'll come back together. So my mom, for one reason or another, she was hospitalized, and it was among probably the scariest experiences I've ever had to go through, having to interact with the medical industry and the healthcare industry in Armenia. Complete disaster. Complete disaster. Like, my experience those 2 nights at that hospital were no different than Will Smith in I Am Legend. I kid you not. It was horrific. It was horrible. I have never, ever been... There's only one thing I've ever been afraid of in my life, and that's living a life without meaning or purpose. That night, I was terrified. But, to be honest, there probably was no reason for me to be terrified. I think it was just my own ignorance of not having lived in that country, not understanding it. But we're very frequent people and customers of Cedars-Sinai, so I'm kind of used to different standards of the hospitals here.
Of course.
But nonetheless, so what was I saying? Without losing my train of thought.
The development.
So the development of it's a very, very slow process. And so hospitals need to be developed. The agricultural sector needs to be developed, and we can yell and scream and say, you know what, Parliament's not doing its job, or the city council in Yerevan is not cleaning out the streets. And while all of these are very important, they are all issues that absolutely need to be addressed, and we need to hold all of our government officials across the world more accountable to the communities that they're supposed to serve and represent. At the same time, we need to realize that there's certain things that Armenia probably should pay more attention to than over others, and resources should probably be focused more on protecting and defending a country from being annihilated than all the nuances that we would like to see improved. So we need to go easy on Yerevan. And we need to go easy on prioritize on the interior stuff, right? Unless if it's of course, corruption or anything else. But there's other priorities that needs to be addressed. So asking to just build homes, it's like if you build it, they will come, but it's not sustainable.
Yeah,
right.
I'm not going to get into the politics of Los Angeles.
So my proposal, my suggestion is that. In order for us to help Armenia shed off the problems that it has and to resolve it and move forward, is that the population there needs to be increased. And that is 100%. That is a problem all on its own. We always have the sentiment and the feelings that it's done by design, where the country is now being depopulated and people are leaving, and there's more people leaving than coming in. And so that in itself is a problem. But if we isolate and we just look at it in an isolated vacuum, you want to solve these problems, you need to graduate and become a country that has more people than just 3 million.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. We've been conversing for about almost 3.5 hours.
No
time
way.
Flies.
Are you serious?
Right there. 3 hours and 23 minutes.
It could probably keep going.
Yeah,
there's so many things.
I know some of the audience members had questions, but I think we're a little bit past.
Let's take one.
You want to take one?
Let's take one.
I did have
you guys
served.
Yeah, let's.
My phone's dead, so might want to.
Let's take one. I'll keep it brief if it's addressed to me.
There was, I think it was. Was it by? Hold on, scroll down. I think that might have been it.
That was the one. Yeah, it's from Khachatur.
Let's see. Okay, so it says, let's say today's Armenian government denying or saying it's not true that the Armenian genocide ever happened. It's possible. And what can we do as Armenian or American Armenians?
If the Armenian government officially
denying or genocide, saying it's not true that the Armenian genocide ever happened is possible.
I think he's referring to the fact that there's the fact that Turkey had put a condition that no demands of land. Right. And because Turkey's issue is the diaspora, right? Because the diaspora is the one who's obviously pushing more of this agenda. So I think he's referring more towards that. But the Armenian government isn't denying the genocide. This is more politics of saying, if Turkey, because there are talks, if Turkey were to, let's say, accept it, which I don't know if that would ever happen, Armenia won't go and say, okay, well, now that you accepted it, I need all these lands back.
Yeah.
But there was another problem to that. Let's say this does, and I'll let you answer, but I always say, and we had a conversation, I don't know if it was with Arapapyan or whoever it was, we talked about all these lands that Western Armenia get it back. Right now, majority are Kurds. So those Kurds become Armenian citizens. And how do you going to govern them if they become Armenian?
Yeah, that's right.
That itself is already like, how do you going to do?
You're not taking on.
Now, do you have
them get to elect their own representative?
Yeah.
Well, we were
back to the same. So it's so complicated. It's not as easy as just demanding for the. I wish, somehow it works out. but I don't think, I think it's
so. I think it all ties in together. In all honesty, I mean, I think it's a great question, and I think it really ties everything together. For example, okay, let's say Armenia doesn't deny this claim, and Armenia goes after its land in Western Armenia, and Artsakh, and Azerbaijan, and parts of Georgia, and so it pretty much takes back the entire Armenian highlands, right? What do you do with all that land? I mean, how would you defend it? What do you do? Well, to say, okay, this is mine, you keep it, and you sit there?
Yeah, Nadina, we weren't saying that you get rid of the Kurds. They still live there. That's question. What I'm saying is, like, if those lands now are given back and they're considered part of the Armenian Republic, you have to take care of these people. You have no. I'm talking about where the Western repopulate.
Again, what do you do with all that land? Like, how many Kurds are there?
What do you mean? What do you do with that? People still are living there. There's still cities. Okay. Kurds are there. Now the Kurds become citizens of Armenia.
Hypothetically speaking.
Okay. What are you going to do? Get rid of them?
No, of course not.
Not hypothetically. Okay. So then you run across the problem of, okay, now are they indigenous people or not? And if they are, there's international law that you need to abide by.
Yeah.
Right?
But why would you want to get rid of them? Now you become what the Turks did to us, correct, right? Yeah. So do you want that image?
No, I'm just
got your question. No, what I'm saying is, like, those people live there, stay there. Those are their homes. I don't care what you say. Those people are there. Mm-hmm. So now they become Armenian citizens, right? Republic of Armenia, because now you have also. Okay, so now the Armenian government has to make sure these people are protected. Do you have, like you said, do you have the police force? Do you have the army? Do you have what if some of them are low income? Are you now going to pick up how many Kurds are there? Like 20 million or something?
It's a very large community, very, very large.
I mean, imagine adopting 20 million children all of a sudden who are going to be dependent on you. I mean, so it's very complicated.
We didn't know what to do with the people that just migrated, who came to Yerevan during the war.
Yeah, it was 100,000 or 60,000. Yeah, so that was the. It's difficult. It's very difficult.
It is, and it is extremely complicated, especially as someone who has worked in government behind the curtains in the administration, at city hall, at county government, boards and nonprofits and all of it, meeting with elected officials, talking about them offline, online, officially, informally. It is so overly complicated with many moving parts and so much to take into consideration.
Yeah.
And that is just our internal dialogue within our own cities and within our own counties, within our own country. Now imagine if you have all these other geopolitical players with their own laws and their own cultures and their own ideologies. Like, it's futile to yell and scream and make all these demands, and then when nothing happens and say, oh, you know what? They're not listening to us. They don't want what's best for us, and so forth.
Let's go start a GoFundMe.
Right? Yeah, let's go start a GoFundMe. So
that's what it is. That's what they do.
But to answer, give a little bit of insight on our brother Khachatur, right?
Yeah,
Khachatur's question. Well, so let's say Armenia says, you know what? We don't have any claim. Truce, whatever, you guys keep it. I can't deal with any more land. We're trying to figure out what to do with the ones that we have, whatever. So you're saying, what can we do from the United States? Well, again, it comes down to now a legal question, and how would an attorney approach this? If there was a parent that passed away and is leaving an inheritance, and there's a whole bunch of beneficiaries and inheritors, and well, a couple of years ago, the Armenian Church filed a lawsuit in international court demanding all the church properties back. So the churches have always had the largest properties. After that is gonna, if that goes through, And it's very difficult because it's a church, religious, right? It's a religious institution or organization. It becomes extremely difficult for the court. It becomes much more difficult for the courts than if it was just someone claiming their great-great-grandfather's home, right? Their shed, their tool shed back. And so we have to wait and see what happens in court and what if it'll get honored and if there'll be a judgment and if there'll be any kind of an order. And then how would you enforce that order to see if the churches can get the properties back? And if they can under that precedent, then it'll open up an opportunity for other people to, under that same precedent, to go and start filing claims to take back those properties. It's extremely complicated. It's very, very complicated. There's laws. People say, well, there's international court and we need to do this and that. Well, you know what? There's, let's appeal to the United Nations and all of it. We're supposed to do all of it. But we also need to understand that, and I'm not an expert on this, just whatever that I've learned from our experts like Gevorkyan and Dr. Momjan and my mentor, the mayor of Rolling Hills Estates, Frank Zerunian. Not everywhere has jurisdiction everywhere. Okay, you can't compel or force other governments to do certain things. They say, the United States reaffirmed its recognition of the Armenian genocide. What did that give us? That gave us nothing. Well,
nothing.
Perhaps. Maybe it didn't give us anything, but is it one more thing that we got? Is it one more piece of the puzzle? And at what point will that make a difference on the relationship between Turkey and Armenia and how that might eventually help us in somewhere where we would least expect it? It's overly complicated. There's far too much happening in the world. There's too many overlapping situations and conditions, and that is why there's so many countries that keep pushing on. It is not resolvable. Just call for peace, and let's prevent people from dying.
Yeah.
And one more thing that I would like to interject before you guys take over and conclude the show. I often, I don't want to say I speak for the Armenian American community. By in no way am I selected or chosen to represent anyone or any group in any way. Just to speak as an Armenian American that shares similar values and similar concerns and similar hopes and desires for us Armenians, our country of the United States, and also our homeland of Armenia. I want to speak for the Armenians of the Republic of Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh of Artsakh, who have lost their most precious people, the most precious thing in their lives. They've lost their children. And every time we get up on Instagram and on Facebook and on social media and we write very sharp statements and we are extremely critical of one another and our governments, both here in the United States and in Armenia, when we are yelling through the bullhorns and we're doing rallies and we're demanding things for one way or another. And I'm not supporting or opposing anything in this statement. I just want to ask for us to keep in mind and consider the fact that some of the things that that people within the diaspora have also demanded could result in someone else's son needlessly dying on the battlefield. I don't have a child. It's not my son who's going to die. And your child is probably not going to die. But by you wanting to influence the government representatives and officials in Armenia to act in the way that you believe impulsively that they should act, which will result in you seeing the death of someone your age, or someone who had hopes and dreams, and someone who wanted to live a peaceful life. It's a difficult call to make. So I'm not saying that Armenians in Armenia if it comes down to it, that we should not be patriotic enough and expect people to go off into war to defend their country. And I'm saying to go off and defend their country, not to go off and die, but to go off and defend their country and do whatever is needed to defend their country and our values and our identities. But let's keep in mind that things that we are demanding and yelling and screaming to happen, the ripples of our demands go very far, and they affect and impact people's lives in multiple ways. So I just want us to keep that in mind.
It's a good point. It's a good point. We all have knee-jerk reactions.
One more question from Don before I ask my last question. Tony was asking, what's the greatest lesson you can pass on to young advocates of the Armenian cause?
A couple of the greatest lessons that I've learned is, if you have a heart, you are destined to love, and if you have a mind, you're destined to think. Pick a cause, be very strategic and methodical, stay laser focused, and see that it gets accomplished. But remember, activism, politics, advocacy, and government is an extremely thankless job. You will not be rewarded. You will not be thanked. You will not be appreciated. And the reason why I say this is so you know that very clearly, that whatever you do decide to do has to burn a fire inside your heart so strong that you're not going to need praise and appreciation, and you're not going to need a pat on the back, and you're not going to need people to thank you for having done whatever it is that you chose your project to be. But I do want you to know that there are some incredible people out there that the journey will bring you across. You will make some incredible lifelong friends. You will learn things that you would never have otherwise learned. And always know that there is so much more that you can be and so much more that you can do if you pick something that you are extremely, extremely passionate about. Honor the churches, honor the political parties, be respectful towards everybody. No one has any of this figured out. We are all just winging it. Everyone is giving it their best shot, and you will come across people who will be very self-serving, self-interested, and very egotistical. Those people come and go. They don't last very long on the trip. So stay focused on what you need to do, but select something that you're extremely passionate about and start doing it. And if you'd like to chat more, if you need some guidance, if you have a question, I'm always available by social media, by email. I always try to be the individual that I needed growing up and starting a career in government and becoming an activist, where I made just about every mistake in the book. Everything from not knowing how to talk the way that you should professionally, or how to carry myself, all the way down to not having the friends or the relationships I needed to get anything done. So I'm happy to hold people's hands and then give guidance and mentor them and help shape them into becoming the advocates that we need to keep representing our communities and keep working for the cause and defending our identities and our values as Armenians across the world.
Yeah. Well said. And if you guys want, you can always reach out to us with any questions. Again, like I said, we're kind of running late with the show today, and we'll pass on the question to David and or connect you with him. Before we let you go, the last question we always ask.
A fun one.
We've kind of been, well, We missed a few of them.
Well, it also inspired.
Well, we also had Gevork 3 times, so we weren't going to ask him the same question.
Gevork's been asked this question before.
So this is a question that one of our listeners suggested, and we try to do this as much as possible when we have guests. It's the time machine question. And the question is, what time in Armenian history would you want to travel to witness, and why?
Why?
I wish you guys asked me this question in the beginning, and I would have spent 3 hours on this.
No, we leave it at the end.
We're going to be here until 6 a.m.?
No. And my first question to Vic and Mike was, 2 hours. How the hell are we going to talk that much? Like, I don't have anything to cover.
3 hours and 41.
42.
So let me make it brief and get to it. The time period, and I've actually, this is so ironic. I've thought of this many times, and I've also included in my journals and in my writing. The time period that I would have loved to live in Armenia. That's the question, right?
Yeah.
I would have loved, and I say this from the deepest, darkest place in my heart, and I'm glad that I'm saying this openly and publicly, and it's being recorded, and I could share it with my parents. The time period that I would have wanted to really live in Armenia is the 1960s of my parents' time in Yerevan. Not because, and I want to be very clear about this, not because it was under the Soviet Union. No. Absolutely not. But it was the golden age of Armenian people where they were left alone to create and build and compose and invent. The stories that they have told me lives on inside of me, like a movie, like a fantasy, that I would have loved to have lived in that era.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the world in the 1960s was great, right?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But especially in Armenia. And so, that's my answer. I would have loved to have lived in my parents' era.
Seriously, great answer.
Very, yeah.
I think it hits home for both of us.
Last week, with Armen, when we were talking about the Armenian film society, the history of Armenian film, I mean, that was the
golden era and film and everything, music,
and there are videos that you can watch on YouTube of Armenia, the streets in the 1960s, and the way they were dressed, the way they were talking, everything that was happening. You're just like, oh my God, I want to be there. I want to be there.
My mom and my dad, like stories that we've talked about.
And there are movies that were shot that were about that time period. During that time period, everything happened, and they're just wonderful to watch. And like I said, it's one of my, as much as I love history and I want to go witness a lot of other time periods, that is one of the ones that my parents have talked about.
Oh yeah.
And they witnessed, and like you said, it's like a movie in your head. And I wish I could have witnessed it.
The good old saying, "Me jamanak laver."
No, you know how Cuba has kind of like created that theme of their taxi cars?
Yes.
Right? I think Yerevan should do that with
in the 1960s.
What was that car called? The 06 or the 24, the 21? Where are these numbers that they
Zero chairs?
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? So, I think the white and yellow ones all over Yerevan. It's kind of like the official Yerevan car, right?
Just upgraded. Maybe electric. David, thank you so much for joining us. This was a great conversation. I hope our audience learned something about the great spirit of the Armenian diaspora and everything they've done. Yes, we criticize it. Yes, they've been mistakes, but also the reason why the diaspora is so powerful is because of the great men and women in the past who have been advocates, activists, like you said, who have paved the way for us to be able to do what we do. And on Monday, April 24th, I recommend everybody to do something. If you don't want to go march, that's completely fine. At least go to Montebello, put some flowers, or go to Pasadena. There's also Rolling Heights Memorial. Do something to honor our ancestors. Don't just sit there and pretend that somehow you're better than everybody else, or because these people are going and marching, it doesn't make any difference. That's fine. But you yourself, as an Armenian, go pay your respects.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do something. Yep. Grab your kids and go. And most of what I think most Armenian school, well, I know Armenian schools don't have school. Good. I think LA County now has it as a recognition. I don't think it's off, but don't take your kids to school. Take the day off and go. You know. Having said that, I want to mention that next Thursday we will be airing the Mer Talk event that we filmed. This will be 8 p.m. Pacific Coast Standard Time. We will be live in the chat rooms. Dr. Gevorkyan will be live in the chat room. So if you guys have questions, he'll be answering them. So again, that will be next Thursday at 8 p.m. And we'll be premiering that on YouTube. And then our last episode will be May 4th for season 3. And we have a special guest from Canada. His name is Artashes Keshishian, who will join us via video. He is the author of The White Genocide, explaining the origins of it and providing solutions. The book basically details explaining and discussing the assimilatory behavior observing among Armenians, both in the Republic of Armenia and the diaspora. The 5 main, basically the 5 points, the way he discussed put it for me, was discussing the linguistics, musical, traditional, and historical changes that have happened basically throughout the Armenian influences. And so that will be May 4th. That will be our last episode for season 3, and then we'll go on break, and then we'll be back sometime in August. We have a lot of work to do. The project Forgotten Thrones is moving along. We got some big news today, but unfortunately I can't announce it. Hopefully next episode I'll get to announce it, but it is big news and we're excited. And those of you who have been supporting us on Patreon, every dollar you guys are giving us is going towards this project. It's not much, but if you guys, you know, we want you to be part of our family, our community. So support us, become a Patreon, go to patreon.com/medherosner. It's $5 a month, or on YouTube, click on that member button that there is, starts at $3 to $2.99. But I promise you, we are doing some great work, and this is for the future of Armenia, Armenians, Armenian children, and education of Armenian history.
Yeah.
Follow us on Instagram at Mer Hersoner. This is where we post most of our announcements. And as we always say at the end of the show, respect one another.
Love one another.
And till the next episode, take care of yourselves.